I don't know why I did this, frankly, to myself, but we're here now. I'm so serious, like I'm not even kind of kidding when I say this has been and will be an emotional roller coaster for me. For the unaware, we're talking about the kings that could have been the history of B.A.P. In other words, we're talking about B.A.P. And B.A.P. is an exceedingly formative part of the Simon canonical timeline, okay? They were the first K-pop concert I ever went to. They were the first K-pop album I ever owned a copy of. Was a B.A.P. album. One of my like formative ships was DJ. I have merch. I don't know if you can see it. I have B.A.P. merch, both like in general and specifically that I'm wearing for this video. I'm realizing now you won't be able to see it. I might change at some point, but until then, they are formative to me. The Simon you see sitting here before you would not be the same person if not for this group. Cool. So standard shout out. Slide, we must give credit where credit is due. First, Miss Smoky Glow. I don't know what she's up to anymore. I really don't. I think she's back. She did just recently return once again. By the time this video goes up, God only knows what she's going to be up to. But the reason she's here, she used to make these evolution of videos. She actually did recently post one, and I loved them. I continue to love them. I greatly enjoyed the one that she recently posted. So, they are what originally inspired me in the first place to make these history videos. I know this isn't like an insanely complex concept to sit down and make like a 2-hour video. I don't know how long this is going to be, but a really fucking long video about a topic you feel passionately about. I know that's not an original concept, but she's the one who inspired me, so that's why she gets to be here. Also, I will be putting both her channel and playlist of Evolution ofs in the description for your viewing pleasure. Next, the bestie. The bestie gets special shoutouts in this video because while most of the groups I have covered in this I would have gotten into independently of her, this B.A.P. is different. I only became a B.A.P. stan because of the bestie. She's the only reason I can sit here for hours borderline screaming about this group, losing my entire mind about this group. It's all because of her. And also, she's the one who told me to make these slideshows. So if you appreciate the fact that these are slideshows now, say thank you to the bestie. Lastly, my Bean. Bean, your recipes are actually going in the mail probably tomorrow. So I finally did my job. That's not the point. The point is Bean is light of my life. Truly the only way I get through my Wednesdays, and also is the reason I can make these long videos. So if you appreciate the fact that I sit here for, in this case, it's probably going to be like a good 6 hours of my day, losing my entire mind, say thank you to Bean. Next, standard disclaimers. There's nothing scary, just a few things to cover. It won't be that bad. First thing, I cannot stress this enough, B.A.P. has 5 members to me. Okay, the other one, he's not going to be mentioned. He's not in the member section. His activities will not be discussed. His face, to the best of my abilities, has not been shown in this slideshow. I need you to understand that, okay? I did my best. If there's a picture of him in a background that I just missed, I worked hard cropping him out of every image, so just go with it. But the point is, B.A.P. has 5. Okay? Cool. Next, as always when I cover these, I'm only going to cover the active years of B.A.P., which in this case means, like, I guess technically like 2011 really is where we start, but we're only going through 2018. I'm going to skip the next 6-ish years, and then we're going to cover the reunion. I'm not going to get into what all the members have been up to. There will be brief discussions. We will have a, like, where have they been section, kind of like when I did 21, but we're not going to, like, really cover it. In addition to covering active years only, I will not be covering every activity B.A.P. has done, and I had to fight the urge to omit some stuff. I did a bad job in certain cases. I don't know if you could tell how long this video is. I certainly don't know how long it's going to end up being, but it's long. I think we can all agree it would be described as long. So I'm omitting things, and we all need to be okay with that. Next disclaimer, if you did not watch my secret video, and you're on the newer side of K-pop fandom, you might not be aware, TS is the absolute worst, and I hate them with every fiber of my being, and it's really in a way that I feel like the only good comparison is the way Kendrick Lamar feels about Drake, okay? I want people dead. And I want it to be by my hand, and I want it to be in ways that would frankly make Stalin terrified to cross me. Also, unlike Secret pretty privately hated their company. I'm very sure they hated their company based off the fact that half the members sued them at one point, but Secret was on the more private side of despising their company. That is not true for B.A.P. B.A.P. very openly did not like their company by the end of their contract. At one point, Youngjae was told by someone, they were like, oh, I'm auditioning for TS. What advice would you give me? And he responded practically verbatim, like, don't audition for TS. Go somewhere else. Like, go to another company. This company fucking sucks. Next, final disclaimer, opinions will be shared. I don't know if you've already noticed that I have very strong feelings about this group, and you're not prepared for just how strong those feelings are gonna get, because I have a lot of opinions about B.A.P. and they will be shared, and you can disagree with all of them. That's totally fine. This video is for my insanity. You don't have to be as insane as me. In fact, I hope you're not. Okay, that covers everything I wanted to cover. It is now going to be member time, and I need you to understand that every single member of this group is actually kind of crucial to understanding my psyche. And I wish I was kidding, but we're gonna go in age order to at least give the slight appearance that I can be somewhat unbiased and normal about this group. Either way, starting us off, we have the one and only Bang Jungkook, who was born on March 31st, 1990, and served as our fearless leader, main rapper, and primary producer. And when I say Jungkook is a producer, he is a prolific producer, okay? To this day, he is one of the idols with the most credited songs to his name, and unlike some other people that I'm not gonna name, but I'll let you read between the lines, he actually rarely has the most lines in B.A.P. songs. I actually would be surprised if there's more than like 5 that are primarily Jungkook's songs. It's just, he really did always consider how the other members would sound in a way that a lot of other producers just don't do, and I feel like that goes back to him being our fearless leader. Other Jungkook fun facts include having a twin brother. This is Jungkook and his brother. He also used to promote under the name Jet Blackman, and not only is he a Formula 1 girl, he is a Lando Norris girl, notably, to me, my former boy. Now let's talk about how Jungkook is critical to my psyche, okay? You may recall, I told you at the beginning of this video, B.A.P. was my very first K-pop concert, and they were. And Jungkook looked so devastatingly attractive in ways that, like, me and the bestie were not emotionally prepared to experience. We went in being like, we know what Jungkook looks like, we know what they all look like. We were so jarred by the way that this man looked live and in person that to this day, when we go to a concert for a group we've never seen before, we ask who will be the Jungkook. Which member is gonna look so insanely attractive in person that it's gonna alter the way we view them forever. Our next man is Jung Dae-hyun. Someone I could really and truly go on an unhinged 45-minute tirade about with the least amount of prompting, so I'm gonna do my very, very best to be normal during his section. So, Daehyun was born on June 28th, 1993, and served as the main vocal of B.A.P. And when I tell you this man was an underrated vocal, I feel like he did not get his flowers for his era, at least when he was, like, at his peak vocally. He could sing. Like, the voice on this boy, incredible. Let's have some Daehyun fun facts. He has a tattoo on his back that is actually B.A.P. themed, so I'm so normal about this information. I'm perfectly fine about it. Other fun fact, okay, this is gonna sound insane, and I need you to understand that it just was a thing in K-pop. People used to say, down here, Taehyung of Bangtan, of BTS fame, if you will. There used to be like a running gag that he was the love child of Daehyun and Baekhyun from EXO. I can't explain this. I really can't. Even at the time that it was actively occurring, I can't explain this. I don't know what's going on with this. Like, they all look vaguely similar, but the vibes for each of them are all chaotic, but they're all different kinds of chaos. I don't understand. Some more crucial Daehyun lore, at least to me. This man, scaredy cat. Biggest fucking scaredy cat. He was on a V-Live one time. This is a true story. He was on a V-Live one time, and someone commented on the V-Live, and they were like, Daehyun, there's something behind you. And he freaked the fuck out, because this man is the biggest scaredy cat to ever walk the earth. Also, story time that I promise, I swear on my life, I'm not making up. And I frankly can't find any record of it, but back in, I believe, 2017 or 2018, one of the two, B.A.P was doing some V-Live show thing, and they had like campfire time. They had a big like campfire talk about our feelings time. Daehyun started talking about his alcohol dependency that he developed during 2014-2015 era, and I'm so normal about this information, as you can tell. It doesn't make me want to set fire to buildings and shoot people with firearms. I'm so normal about it. I'm normal. I'm calm. Let's talk about Mr. Yoo Young-jae now, okay? He was born on January 24th, 1994, and served as B.A.P's main vocal, and in my opinion, should have been the visual. Look at this man. Look at how well he aged. This is a recent picture. This is not a recent picture. Look at how well he aged. Don't look at this picture yet. We're not talking about this one in regards to his visual status, okay? But these two, he aged like a fine wine. Anyway, Young-jae fun facts. Young-jae used to train at JYP, this is known, and he trained with a lot of idols when he was at JYP, because JYP apparently had like 8 trillion trainees. I remember it was like a running gag that JYP had, like everyone used to train at JYP. Some of the idols, Young-jae is still friends with them, including in J-Bum of GOT7. I'm now looking at this image, and it's kind of horrifying, but it's here. This is Young-jae with J-Bum. Other Young-jae fun facts. He was a good student. He was very smart. He's a smart boy. Next, he was a backup dancer for Secret, which is good for him. And apparently, when he first met Jungkook, he was so terrified of the man, he almost left the company. He almost fully just left and didn't want to debut anymore because he was so scared of Jungkook, and I find it so funny. Next member, Moon Jong-up, who was born on February 6, 1995. He served as B.A.P's main dancer and lead vocal. However, you need to know, as the viewer of this video, he got that lead vocal slot way later into B.A.P's career. Like, maybe 2015, really more like 2016, he really became a lead vocal. He was not that at the beginning. Also, this is another member that I'm of the opinion should have been a visual. Look at this man. Look at his face. Anyway, Jung-up fun facts include he appeared in a handful of Secret music videos in 2011. For the unaware, Secret in 2011, kind of on Queen shit. Also, his nose mole. This mole right here saved lives. Iconic. I could write essays about his nose mole. Also, you need to understand that Jung-up is a ride or die. Okay, he has always been the most vocal about a reunion. If you saw a B.A.P member pop up at another B.A.P member's solo fan meet during the hiatus years, it was Jung-up. Like 9 times out of 10, it was Jung-up. Jung-up was always there, always a ride or die, and he's actually the reason we got this reunion. When he joined his current label, he brought Daehyun over. And that label is the one that has released the B.A.P reunion album. So we all have to say thank you to this man. We do not owe this man there's so much we owe him that we will never be able to repay him for getting us a B.A.P reunion. Lastly, the baby of the group, Choi Junong, or Zello, if you're feeling a little formal. I will not be calling him that, but you are allowed to if you so choose. Junong would be born on October 15th, 1996, serving as B.A.P's lead dancer, lead rapper, and mukbang. Although really, he was also like the unofficial main dancer. Him and Jung-up were always dancing, and they were always serving. Junong fun fact time, he began training in 2006. For a frame of reference, that would have been at the ripe age of 10 years old, and in the wider K-pop timeline, 2006 was before all the members of 2NE1 had joined YG Entertainment, and before the youngest member of New Jeans was born. Additionally, Junong used to be known for his much faster rapping speed. He used to go really fast, and it was something he did mostly in the earlier years of B.A.P, but even so, that, combined with his more nasally voice, really did give him a unique sound, and his voice actually isn't that nasally. It is on the nasalier side, but he's a Hyuna situation where the company essentially told him this is your sound, or maybe he chose to do it. I don't know. I choose to blame TS for every issue in any of these men's lives, but theoretically it could have been his choice. Also, I think this is cute. Junong hated TS, okay? All the members hated TS. It was very known by like 2017. None of them were gonna re-sign once their contracts were up. Junong's contract was actually up before the other members. He debuted before the other members, so he had an earlier contract end date. And his contract was supposed to end either in the middle or just before their tour. I actually don't remember, but he decided he wanted to go on the tour anyway. He decided to like do a temporary extension of his contract so he could go on tour and see more fans. I think that's cute. I think that's sweet. Alrighty. Those are our 5 members. The only 5 members of B.A.P. There's no one else to discuss, so we are now going to begin the timeline. Cool. So, the tale of B.A.P. really actually begins in March of 2011 when Jungkook would be featured on the debut single of secret member June, Going Crazy. TS had actually recruited Jungkook a year earlier when Untouchable, this is Untouchable, a hip-hop duo under TS, had seen him and liked him and told TS to recruit him, and he ended up under the label and therefore on June's debut. And back to Going Crazy. This song was a huge hit, okay? #1 on the Gaon charts, 2 weeks at #1 on the Melon charts, well over 1 million downloads. A huge hit for both June, and more importantly, it got a lot of people very interested in this weird, deep-voiced man who was on the song. And society would be gifted with more Jungkook a few months later when in August he released his solo debut single, I Remember, which featured Yosub of Beast. The things I could tell you about this man, I'm not going to, but it features Yosub of Beast. And while not a massive hit, this song did still do pretty great in the grand scheme of things. It would peak at number 22 on the Gaon charts, number 28 on the Melon charts, and sell around 400,000 downloads. The song also had, I want to say, an insane music video, but in the B.A.P. canon, it's really not that bad. But either way, it's very Love the Way You Lie-esque, like those are the vibes, and it did pretty great. It has around 10 million views currently. Also, while I'm on the topic of the music video, they obviously couldn't get Yosub. Like if you watch it, it's very obvious they just couldn't get a day where Yosub could take a day off and come film a music video, which makes sense. Beast was intensely busy in 2011, but it does mean that there are points where Jungkook is essentially, it looks like he's singing Yosub's lines. I don't know if you've ever heard a Beast song. Yosub's voice and Jungkook's voice could not be more different, and the fact it still amuses me is just a power move, frankly. Also, since I'm here, let's talk about the song. It's good. I like it. I think Jungkook and Yosub's voice can contrast each other well. The raps are good. It's a pretty chorus. The only thing that really holds the song back for me personally is just Jungkook since done much better work. And it doesn't hold up in comparison. However, both from a nostalgic standpoint and also if I were alive in 2011, I think I would have really liked this. November would give us a new member introduction, introduced via the iconic duo Bang and Zello, and they would debut on December 1st with the digital single Never Give Up. The song still did fine. It peaked at number 55 on the Melon charts and number 65 on the Gaon charts. However, it is admittedly a pretty sharp drop from what Jungkook's solo single had done, although again, that could be attributed to Yosub. The one area this song did still manage to do great is on YouTube. The YouTube music video for this song has over 10 million views as well, just as much as Jungkook's does. And for a 2011 single from a group that's been essentially inactive for like half a decade at this point, it's pretty impressive that it has 10 million views, if you ask me. But we have now reached 2012, the official debut year of B.A.P. And I want to give you some context before we really get into it. Okay, close your eyes, okay? I want you to imagine you are your average K-pop fan on January 1st, 2012. You know nothing about B.A.P. They haven't debuted yet. There's no music to actually listen to. The only real thing you, as a member of the general public, would know is that they're the new group under TS, notably the home of Secret. Now, it's fine if you did not watch my Secret video, but what you need to understand is that Secret was massive in 2012. Secret was arguably the biggest girl group active that year, or at least top 3 to be sure. They had multiple huge hits, millions of downloads, tons of fans, and tons of fans who were now suddenly paying attention to B.A.P. And on January 8th, 2012, that general public would get their first ever introduction to all the members of B.A.P. with the release of Ta-Da, It's B.A.P. The lore of this show is B.A.P. are aliens from their planet Mato, and they need to collect the screams of music lovers to save their world. Mottos, by the way, are also the bunnies. These are their motto form. It's also why all of B.A.P albums are bunnies. That's why B.A.P's logo is a bunny. And yes, it does mean that B.A.P was bunnies first. Min Heejin, you are not original. You've done nothing for the general public. Please stop pretending you saved the world. Anyway, I did not rewatch this entire show in the making of this video because I like to reserve some will to live, and the making of this was a trial, so I didn't rewatch the whole thing. I did rewatch some of it. The vibes are pretty much what I remembered. It's just goofy behind the scenes stuff. They do technically play into the lore, but not really. Like, if you were a random person who wanted to learn about B.A.P, this would be a great start. Also, for debut era, they made all the boys go blonde, and I like it. I do. I don't love the actual hairstyle, but conceptually, I like it. I remember some group, like, recently did this. And I don't remember who it was, but I remember I liked it then too. It gives the group a sense of cohesion. I think it's nice. I think more companies should do it. Either way, a few weeks later, on January 25th, we would get the release of the music video for Warrior, the official debut of B.A.P. The album would follow the next day. This album right here, it's gonna go. Let's see, will you stay? Yes. I love that it's short. Can I just say that? I have an intermission coming up, but I love that it's short and that it doesn't really like block the whole screen. It's perfect size for this very moment. On top of that, this album did great, okay? It sold 40,000 copies, peaked at number 3 on the Gaon charts. For a rookie boy group, those are pretty impressive numbers for 2012. Like, for a frame of reference, Warrior was the 3rd highest selling debut album by a boy group that year, just behind Busker Busker and EXO. She's blocking things now. Everyone say goodbye to Warrior. We're talking about Warrior the song. So, Warrior the song, also very successful. It would peak at number 44 on the Gaon charts and number 48 on the Melon charts, making one of the highest peaking debut singles from a boy group that year, only being beaten out by Busker Busker. Warrior would actually outperform Mama on the charts and sell around 500,000 downloads. Outside of the charts, the song also did great. The music video has 25 million views, and the song has 3 million Spotify streams. Now, that 3 million does not sound like a lot, but for a song from 2012, by a group that hadn't been active really since 2018, really since 2017, that's pretty great. Like, Spotify, to me, for old songs, is much more cultural relevance. Warrior, while it did do really well, is not the most culturally relevant of B.A.P's songs. Also, I say this with love, okay? Warrior's not their best work. It's not that it is a bad song. It's not. It's just that, especially in the modern K-pop climate, we have more than enough boy groups who are doing this loud hip-hop sound, and that combined with the fact that B.A.P has much better work. Like, at the time it came out, this was unique, but it's now 2024, and it just doesn't hold up. Now, let's talk B-sides, specifically the Golden B-side, which for the unaware is just a random B-side that I pick because I think it's the best on the album. And I'm choosing to give it to Unbreakable. I did enjoy it as a song, however, I do have to give the caveat that this is probably B.A.P's weakest album, or at least one of their weakest albums. It's not a bad album, okay? The main issue with it is it has a lot of sounds that B.A.P has just done better on later albums. Like, all of the songs they do here, I have other songs I would recommend to you that I think are better songs if you liked them. I hope that made sense. If not, just know Unbreakable is a good song and move on with your day. But we're actually not done with Warrior era quite yet. Following promotions for Warrior itself, B.A.P would return, and they would start promoting Secret Love, a song off their Warrior album that featured Secret member Sung Ji-yoon. Now, eagle-eyed viewers might be wondering, why the hell is A-Lee here? Which brings me to a weird piece of B.A.P lore. Now, because they were promoting this song in 2012, Secret was massive. Secret was busy in 2012. They did not have time to promote with B.A.P. So, B.A.P reached out to a newly debuted female soloist to help them promote. A-Lee! Yeah, to me, this is wild. Like, monstrosity of a soloist, A-Lee. Arguably the queen of the 2010s, or at least one of the queens of the 2010s. spent a couple weeks in early 2012 promoting with B.A.P. I assume it was just that she was already at the music shows because Heaven had come out around the same time. She was presumably promoting Heaven. But yeah, before she was huge, Ailey spent a couple weeks promoting with B.A.P. Anyway, back to Secret Love. It's a fine song. However, the stated goal of promotions for it was to de-mask B.A.P, I guess I would say. Like, it was to give them a less, like, big, scary man image. An objectively hilarious goal if you looked at any member of B.A.P other than Jungkook during this era. Like, Jungkook was the only one that came across as scary. Like, you never looked at Daehyun and was like, no, I'm scared of him. Although maybe you're 17 and afraid of Sabrina Carpenter and you were afraid of Yu Youngjae in 2012. I don't fucking know. But the point is, B.A.P promoted Secret Love for like 2 weeks. It made no noise. We're gonna move on. Following promotions for Secret Love on March 23rd, we would get B.A.P's first official fan meet. And while I hate to give them credit for literally anything, I will concede TS did eat with this idea. They packaged it as B.A.P in secret, like it was a joint fan meet in Singapore. It took place on March 23rd, and it sold out. It completely sold out. I assume in large part because of Secret. Secret was still huge in 2012, but it did mean that a lot of people were coming and being introduced to B.A.P. B.A.P's time in Singapore, including the fan meet, would then be taken and spun into the group's next show, B.A.P Diary. It's only 2 episodes, it came out in mid-April, and again, it's fun, it's cute. It's sort of just, if you liked B.A.P but you wanted something shorter and with less weird lore, watch B.A.P Diary, because I actually did watch it in the making of this video, and I may or may not have shed many tears. The show also doubled as getting people exceedingly hyped for their upcoming second single album. And sure enough, on April 27th, B.A.P made their first official comeback with the release of Power, their second single album. An album I do have a copy of. It is now in a box. Anyway, we are gonna have honesty time before I get into Power. I forget about this comeback entirely, literally all the time. I think it's just that it happened like right after Warrior, if you really think about it, like just a few months later. But I always forget about this one. It's probably just that I don't love this album all that much, and also it's not as iconic as some of their other releases. But either way, Power, you have my sincerest apologies because I forget about you quite consistently. Anyway, let's get into the Power comeback. Starting with the album, it actually did pretty great. It would peak even higher than Warrior did, making it to number 2 on the Gaon charts, and it would sell almost as well. It sold a little less than Warrior, but still managed to pick up around 40,000 copies, which is quite good. The song was also nearly as successful as Warrior was on the charts. It would peak slightly lower on the Melon charts, only making it to number 50, but did peak slightly higher on the Gaon charts, where it peaked to number 38, marking their first top 40 single. Unfortunately, in spite of its relatively equal charting success, it sold way less. Warrior, you may recall, sold 500,000 downloads. Power sold 250, literally half of what Warrior did. It did, however, get slightly higher Spotify streams. Warrior has around 3 million streams, you may recall. Power got 3.5 million, which is fascinating to me because of my prior statements about forgetting about this comeback, but whatever. Last metric is YouTube. Power's music video has around 18 million views. It is admittedly less than Warrior, but it's still pretty good for a pre-Gangnam Style 2012 boy group. Now, Golden B-side time. I almost gave this Golden B-side to Lai Lai, and I do enjoy Lai Lai. I think it's a good song that shows off early B.A.P vocals, but I changed my mind. I gave it to What the Hell. I just think What the Hell is more quintessentially B.A.P. Is now a good time for Simon the marketing genius? Because you're gonna get it either way. Hear me out. I have a vision for this single. Specifically, I have a vision for the single in Warrior. I think what TS should have done, because presumably all the songs on this album were mostly done. They were prepared when Warrior came out. So, my vision is this. They should have taken the songs on this single, taken the songs on the Warrior single, thrown the Bangzello song and Jungkook solo onto one singular album, marketed as their debut full. May and June were actually pretty quiet for B.A.P. They were still doing some things, but nothing I feel like mentioning. So we're going to jump ahead to July, when they really began gearing up for their upcoming album, starting with a new showcase. They had a showcase in Malaysia on July 6th, where they performed some unreleased songs. Speaking of new songs, just a few days later on July 10th, we would get the release of Goodbye, a digital single and a pre-release for B.A.P's then upcoming first mini album. The song was actually different than anything they'd put out, at least in terms of their singles. It was this weird mix of like rock and pop, not in a pop rock way, mind you, in a very different, unique sounding way that's honestly really good. Plus, for a pre-release, it did great. It made its number 51 on the Gone charts, number 87 on the Mellow charts, and sold around 100,000 downloads. I know none of these numbers are that impressive. Even by B.A.P standards, they've already had bigger hits than this. However, for an unpromoted pre-release from a rookie boy group, I think that's pretty great. Also, can we please take a moment to talk about this album cover? I'm fucking obsessed with it in ways I shouldn't be. It's obviously a take on Abbey Road. I don't have to explain that to you. However, it's with the bunnies. And then they have the spaceships in the background. I love it. I think it's so cool. I think it's so cute. I wish I could buy a physical version of it to have and look at. I'm so serious. In my years, my nearly a decade as a K-pop fan, I think this is genuinely one of the funnest album covers I've ever seen. I'm kind of mad it's wasted on a digital pre-release single, but whatever. Enough about the pre-release, let's move on to the album. Great, so July 19th, B.A.P would release their first mini album, No Mercy. And you already know I have a copy. You already know I have a copy. It's a lot bigger than the others, so I'm gonna do my best to keep it up here without it disturbing the slideshow. I'll do my best. Okay. That's, I think, the best we're gonna get. Does it look insane? Yes. Am I sticking with it? Yes. Let's talk about the album now. B.A.P's No Mercy did see a very sharp drop in sales. I will not deny that. It sold 25,000 copies and peaked at number 3 on the Gone charts. Now, that isn't as bad as a modern group selling 25,000 copies. If you sold 25,000 copies today, you would have had an absolute flop, and you certainly wouldn't have made it to number 3 on the charts. And it's true, but for 2012, 25,000 copies isn't bad. However, it is simultaneously a very concerning drop from the roughly 40,000 copies their first 2 albums had sold. I do think a big factor in this was just general B.A.P fatigue, because A, their first 3 songs sound very similar to each other, so there is that, and also, more importantly, 3 comebacks in 6 months would be exhausting for any fandom, right? Like, think about it. 3 comebacks, 2 shows in 6 months. That's a lot of content for any group, let alone a brand new one. Now, let's talk about the title track, okay? No Mercy, the song, did relatively well. In terms of its peak position, number 40 on the Gone charts, number 50 on the Mellow charts, so around as well as both of their past singles had done. Meanwhile, its sales right around 450,000 downloads. Not quite Warrior levels, but definitely an uptick from Power. Then there's YouTube. YouTube is a bit more complex when it comes to the No Mercy comeback. Now, for Power and Warrior, they had 2 versions, as does No Mercy. It's very common for this era of K-pop in particular that you had 2 versions of the music video, one on 1MK, one on your own official channel, right? Now, for the past 2 releases, I have just used the one that has more views. There's almost always one that has significantly more views than the other one. The problem is, for No Mercy, the 2 videos have around the same view count. They both have over 10 million views. There's not one that has 25 million and one that has like 2. Their combined view count is 27 million views, which means that at the same time, this is the most viewed B.A.P music video. However, because that 27 million is split almost evenly between 2 music videos, it is simultaneously their least viewed music video. But enough about the title. I want to talk B-sides for a minute, because No Mercy is the first album that really has great B-sides on it, including what is, to this day, one of my favorite B.A.P B-sides, and my choice for golden B-side, Dancing in the Rain. This song is so fun and cute in a way no other B.A.P song has really been up until this point, and it's really the first B.A.P song I would say is a pop song more than anything else. Like, its primary purpose is pop song, and as a pop girl, I'm thrilled, and I would highly recommend it to all the other pop girls out there. B.A.P would not wait long to return, releasing a repackaged version of their first album entitled Crash on August 30th. This mammoth of a thing right here, for reference, I'm not leaving it up because it will block the entire slide. Do you see how large that is? It's also, for the record, I bought this secondhand. It is breaking. That will become relevant later. But, like, I don't know if you can, like, really tell. Like, the corners are separating. It's been like that since I got it. I got it for dirt cheap because it was old as shit and breaking. But I do have a copy of this album, and that does make me very happy. Also, for a reason I will never understand, this album isn't treated like a repackage on streaming services. If you were to go to, say, Spotify right now, it would, unless they've changed it, it would show you 2 new songs. It would show you Crash, and it would show you I Remember. We'll get to it. But it's a repackage. Like, I have the album. I've put the CD in the CD player that I own, and it is a repackage. All the songs on No Mercy are on this album. I don't know why they treat it like this. Either way, the album did fine. Okay? It did peak at number 3 on the Gaon charts, so yay for that. However, it would see an even bigger drop in sales. It only sold around 20,000 copies, making it, to this day, the lowest selling B.A.P album. And I do think my B.A.P exhaustion theory was still in play with these sales. Like, you remember how I said 3 releases in 6 months was a lot? This was 4 releases in 7. Like, it didn't get better. But it's fine, because Crash, the lead single off this album, was the biggest hit B.A.P had put out up until this point in their careers. It's also, if you ask me, the best song up until this point, at least in terms of titles, their best title, I should say, because you may recall I said the first 3 B.A.P songs were all sonically pretty similar. They were loud, they were shouty, they were rap. Crash is a pop song. Crash is a bright and cute and summery, and I love it so much. It also did exceedingly well. Okay, Crash would peak at number 17 on the Gaon charts, their first ever top 20 single, and over on the Melon charts, it would also become their highest peaking single, peaking at number 29. Crash also sold surprisingly well. Okay, it is to this day the most downloaded B.A.P song, 600,000 downloads. For a frame of reference, amongst idol boy group releases in 2012, or rookie idol boy group releases, I should say, like of those that debuted in 2012, Crash is the best-selling one. And I feel like we do not appreciate that fact enough. The only 2012 debut boy group that was outselling Crash was Busker Busker. And they don't count. Like, Crash was selling better than anyone else. Ironically, while it was thriving on the charts, Crash was flopping hard on YouTube. I think it's just that it wasn't a real produced music video. It was more like behind the scenes cute and fun. But even so, it only has around 5 million views. An insane drop compared to their first 3 releases. And personally, I don't get it. This music video is cute, okay? This music video is cute, and it's fun, and it's one of my favorite B.A.P music videos, like, especially of their early work. It's one of my favorites. It's so cute, it deserves more love. Now, normally, this is where I give you my golden B-side. However, you may recall, I told you there's only 2 songs on this album. There's the titular Crash, and then I Remember, which was actually a re-recording. I did not mention that. It's a re-recording with Daehyun doing Yosub's lines. This isn't like a new arrangement. Whenever they performed, I Remember, live at their shows, Daehyun would do the vocals. It wasn't a new arrangement. However, it does mean that there's actually no new B-sides on this album, so I've decided I'm not going to do a golden B-side, and I would like to point out, I think they should have added 1 new B-side to this album. I think it would have helped. Anyway, we would also get another showcase around this time, this one being in Taiwan, so good for them. However, much of September is spent promoting Crash, so we're actually going to jump ahead a little bit. October would get us our 3rd B.A.P show of the year with the release of B.A.P Killing Camp. It began on October 10th, ended on October 24th, and ran for 3 episodes. Rewinding ever so slightly, on October 23rd, the day before the final episode of B.A.P's Killing Camp, we would get the release of Stop It, B.A.P's 3rd single album and their 5th physical release of the entire year, this cute little thing right here. And I would argue looking at the sales. B.A.P. Fatigue, still in full force. It made it to number 3 on the album charts. B.A.P. is very good at charting albums. Less so about selling them with this specific release. It sold 26,000 copies. Not awful, but not ideal. Especially when, again, this album is so cute. I love this album packaging. I think it's adorable. It's tiny, but it's not like too tiny. I've complained about tiny album packaging in the past. This is not that. I think this album packaging is like damn near perfect. Stop With the Song also continued to do great. It's also a very good song. If you ask me, like Crash, it's more of cutesy pop vibes than loud, shouty rap vibes. And I think it's underrated. I think people don't think about Stop It enough in the B.A.P. canon. And whilst I will not deny, it's not even top 3, probably not even top 5 B.A.P. titles for me. It is still very good and does not get the love she deserves. Refocusing, let's talk charting for a second. I'm actually gonna do that. Let's talk charting now, okay? It would become their second highest peaking single on all the charts. It would peak at number 28 on the Gaon charts and number 37 on the Melon charts. Also, it would sell 400,000 downloads. Now, in my mind, I want to be like, oh, that's really good for a 2012 boy group that was of B.A.P's level of popularity. 400,000 downloads is really good. And then I remind myself that this is their 4th highest selling of their 5 singles, only 1 single sold less. B.A.P, I feel like I forget, in spite of making this monstrosity, I forget that they were actually really good at selling their singles. Unfortunately, we can't have everything. Stop It would also do not horribly on YouTube, but not ideal either. It has around 13 million views, which isn't bad, but it does mean it is lower than their first 3 singles. And just like with Crash, I don't get it, okay? I will admit, this music video is fucking weird. This is a weird piece of work. However, it fits the song perfectly at the same time. I'm gonna look you dead in the eye, and I'm gonna tell you, this music video starts with Daehyun hitting Jungkook with a car, and then Jungkook turns invisible and tries to hit on a hot teacher, and also he has a tail. Like, tell me you're not intrigued by that. But I think it's time for the Golden B-side. I'm gonna give it to the opening track, Yes Sir. In spite of its short runtime, because it is a short song, my main logic is, while I enjoy the other B-side on this album, Happy Birthday, that's the name of the song, it's a very pretty ballad, but it just doesn't compel me, it doesn't intrigue me, it doesn't do it for me the way that Yes Sir does. Anyway, Stop It would mark the group's final release of 2012, but we're actually not done yet. On December 27th, Youngjae would release a collaboration with label mate Sanhwa of Secret entitled Everything is Pretty. The song was meant to be a gift to the fans of both groups, because both groups were done so well that year. And the song also continued that trend. The song did great. It would peak at number 22 on the Gaon charts and number 27 on the Melon charts. The song also sold like 300,000 downloads. It did great. Admittedly, I would argue that has more to do with Sanhwa than Youngjae, because Secret was substantially more popular. Not that B.A.P wasn't popular, but like Secret was huge. So I assume Sanhwa was the main factor. But either way, the song did well. Okay, releases are now done. Thank Christ. We're not done yet though, because I still want to talk briefly about the award season of 2012. B.A.P was up for essentially every Rookie Award, and they won a good few of them, including at the Melon Music Awards and at the Golden Disc Awards. The only big show B.A.P didn't win the Rookie Award for, really, was the Mamas. Understandably, they lost to Busker, which makes sense, but they did not leave empty-handed. They won the Mnet PD's Choice Award, so yay! Also, story time about TS being absolutely fucking awful in every way. So TS sucks. We know that, right? Like, we, the canon, have established that. Well, it turns out, following B.A.P breaking up, presumably, TS just kind of sold their awards, or at least their physical Mama trophy, which ended up at a flea market in the Philippines. It is, as far as I am aware, in the possession of like an actual B.A.P fan. However, if said fan finds this video and does want to sell it to me, I would unironically pay like a concerningly large sum of money for that trophy. I promise you I will love and cherish it more than I do pretty much anything I own. But with that, we have finally finished 2012. I need you to understand I've been sitting here talking about this one year for like an hour and a half. So we finished, and we're gonna head to the retrospective corner now. Okay, hello! Welcome to the retrospective corner. Yes, I'm in a different hoodie. This is my Tux hoodie. It is from their concert. I love it dearly. I don't know why I showed the sleeve off to show Tux. It doesn't say Tux. This is my Tux hoodie though. That's not the point. For the new girls, right? We're here for a retrospective, and you may or may not know that when I make my history ads, I like to end every year with a little retrospective. I just think it's a cute, nice way to wrap up what we've discussed. And dear sweet Lord, was B.A.P busy in 2012. I think the best way for us to really show off how insane of a year they had is to compare them to other 2012 boy group debuts. So, EXO released one album in 2012. B2B released 2 albums in 2012. Busker Busker released 2 albums in 2012. Vix released 2 albums in 2012. B.A.P released 3 single albums, a mini album, a repackage, had 3 TV shows, a couple of showcases, and a fan meet. That said, if we just talk idol 2012 boy group debuts, aka we ignore Busker Busker, B.A.P was honestly the biggest on the list, or at least top 2 with EXO. For a frame of reference, they were successfully charting every single they released. They sold millions of downloads in just 2012, and fun fact, do you know which artist had the most appearances on the year-end album charts for 2012? It was B.A.P, where all 5 of their albums made an appearance. And I would argue B.A.P was really poised to take over the world in 2013. However, before we get into that, I would like us to have a teensy little intermission. Okay. Hi. Welcome to the intermission corner. Newer viewers of my history of maybe a little confused because I don't think I've done any for the slideshow era. But older viewers of my history as will know, I used to love doing these intermissions. They were in fact the light of my life in many ways. And I figured, A, I'm already insane about B.A.P, and can and have been talking about them for literally forever at this point, so there's that. And also, this video is long as shit anyway. We might as well make it longer, so I'm bringing back the intermissions. And here and now, I want to talk about versatility, okay? B.A.P is one of the very few groups out there that I really and truly trust to do pretty much any genre. There's like 3 groups out there that I could think of that you could tell me quite literally any genre under the sun, and I'd be like, yeah, they could do a good job with that. B.A.P is one of those groups, and unlike a lot of modern K-pop groups, they really have done a lot of sounds. Like, they have, obviously they're more hip-hop meets pop, that's their core sound, but they have ballads, they have rock songs, they have cutesy pop, they have pop rock. They've done so many things, and pretty much all of them work really well. Now, if you ask me, a big part of why they're able to cover all these genres is actually what inspires the members in the first place. Like, the members themselves have cited a plethora of extremely different artists as their sort of inspiration when they're performing, and Jungkook, being the god-tier producer that he is very, very good at playing into the members' strengths. Starting with Jungkook and Junong, for example, they have cited major hip-hop artists like Kanye West and 50 Cent as sort of their core inspirations, and you can hear it when you listen to B.A.P in a lot of ways. I've said this for at least like a year now. I remember talking to the bestie about it, where with a lot of modern idols specifically, like the newer crop, I'll say, the ones where I grew up listening to the same artists they did, you can hear an inspiration, right? Like, I can tell you that, what's a good example of this? Jungsub from P1 Harmony. He listens to a lot of, like, Kendrick Lamar. I can tell you that because you hear it in his rapping style. Rappers aside, Jonghyun, meanwhile, is a big R&B girl. He said one of his biggest influences is actually Chris Brown, which I'm not getting into the morals of that sentence, but you can hear it, right? Like, Jungkook's solo music is really R&B inspired, at least a lot of it. And again, when B.A.P does more R&B sounds, Jungkook, at least when he has lines, really stands out. Jungkook, meanwhile, has cited a weird mix of like R&B and soul music, which I was not expecting from him. If you ask me, I do think there is a bit of pop in there. I don't know if this is like a me thing, a me delusion, if you will, or if simply it's the fact that he's making pop music. Obviously, he's gonna have some form of pop influence. I don't know, but I can convince that Youngjae is a secret pop girl. Daehyun, meanwhile, is the only member that doesn't really cite international artists when talking about his inspirations. He has, of course, and the other members have, of course, talked about Korean artists, but Daehyun has said his main inspirations are Korean ballad singers like Shin Youngjae and Park Hyo-shin, and whilst those are catalogs I'm the least familiar with, you can definitely tell, like, he listens to a lot of ballads, and when B.A.P does ballads, Daehyun is devouring on every single one of them. Which brings me to factor 2 of why B.A.P's discography is so good, at least if you ask me, which is that the members are, like, really fucking talented. I know it's, like, not a hot take to say that in the modern day of K-pop, all idols are models first and their talent does kind of come second. I saw a tweet the other day that was like, what K-pop opinion would have you like this? And it's like them in jail or whatever. And it was literally just, if you can't sing, you shouldn't debut. And I do agree with that. And while I do think that's new to modern K-pop, older K-pop, it was, like, the idols were really talented, don't get me wrong, but I feel like B.A.P is unique because not only were the idols really talented, B.A.P is one of the rare groups where every one of the 5 members played a really crucial role. Let's start with the obvious pair. Jungkook and Junong. Jungkook and Junong are obviously central to B.A.P's music, not just because their core sound was rap music, but also in the way their voices distinguished B.A.P's sound from a lot of other artists. They have really different voices. That's really what does it. Jungkook's voice is really deep, while Junong's has always been a lot more nasally, and it gave them a much more unique sound. You would never hear a B.A.P song and think it was anyone else, because you'd hear Jungkook and you'd hear Junong, and that would immediately tell you what group you're listening to. Meanwhile, Daehyun and Youngjae, and later on Jungkook, all are really good singers, and again with Daehyun and Youngjae in particular, they have a sort of similar thing that Jungkook and Junong have going on, where Youngjae's voice is a lot higher than Daehyun's is, and Daehyun has like this classic main vocal voice. If you were to ask me to think of like a classic main vocal voice, he wouldn't be the first artist I'd think of, but he is up there. Like, you hear Daehyun sing and you're like, that's a main vocal. Plus, while Jungkook is up there in terms of singing ability, that's actually not what his role is. His role was a dancer. Him and Junong really carried dancing for this group. I haven't really brought it up, and I won't going forward really because it doesn't come up all that often, but B.A.P was really good at live performances, both because they had fun energy and were good at performing, but also because Jungkook and Junong are really fucking good dancers, and they always manage to work in their choreography moments without it overshadowing the other members. Like in Chonsa, it starts with a choreography number. Badman has a dance break. Their songs were tailored, not so that they outdid other members, but they always had their moments to shine, and it really did make them stand out amongst other groups. I'm not going to get into the actual dynamics between the members, but that was also a factor, and with one real glaring issue, B.A.P, other than that one thing, is kind of the perfect K-pop group. But that concludes this intermission, and yes, it was a poorly disguised excuse for me to just rant more about B.A.P and how talented they are and about how good their catalog is, but we may now go back to the timeline. I would like it known that we are at 2013, essentially one calendar year since the debut of B.A.P. We are approximately 18 pages into these notes. For a frame of reference, my entire history of aespa was like 20. I think I've officially proven I can't be normal about these people no matter how hard I try. Anyway, we begin the year on January 15th with the release of Rain Sound, the pre-release for their then upcoming second mini-album. And for reasons I simultaneously completely get and do not understand, this song became their biggest charter, but more specifically, their highest peaking single on all the charts. Number 15 on the Gaon charts and number 27 on the Melon charts. And I want it known, I love this song. I'm obsessed with this song. It fucks so hard while simultaneously being so toned down. It really shows off how versatile B.A.P can be as well. Like, it's everything. It's everything to me. And just like their last pre-release, it has an excellent album cover. Could we look at this for a minute? Can we talk about this? It's one of the mothers splashing in the rain. And I love it so much. I want a physical copy of it so bad. And I can't have one. Because this is the digital album cover. The main album cover for this album is boring. My life is hard. Speaking of the main album, on February 12th, B.A.P would release One Shot, their second mini album, along with the title track of the same name. And of course, it's right here. We're gonna just... But actually, hold on. Give me a sec. Give me 1 second, please. Can we compare for a minute? Like, look at this album cover. Now look at this album cover. I wish we got this album cover. Anyway, starting off, let's talk album sales, shall we? One Shot was a huge seller for B.A.P. It would peak at number 2 on the Gallon charts. However, it sold 85,000 copies. For a frame of reference, their previous highest-selling album was Warrior. Warrior sold around 40, less than half of what One Shot sold. And One Shot, the song, was just as big, okay? It would peak at number 17 on the Gallon charts, number 30 on the Mellow charts, and sell around 300,000 downloads. Now, the download number is a drop from most of their past singles, but downloads in general were dropping in 2013, so I'm not that concerned. Especially when we start talking about non-charting lore, because this song did numbers, specifically on YouTube, where it has more than 40 million views on the music video. That is, for a frame of reference, not only the most viewed B.A.P music video, it is the most viewed video on the entire TS Entertainment YouTube channel. And this music video, absolutely insane, which is saying something, especially when we talk about like pre-2016 or so. 2013 K-pop music videos were in general insane, and this one was insane even amongst its peers. People died. Literally, Youngjae dies in the music video, beginning the never-ending trend of Youngjae dying in media. Also, I'm not even remotely sorry to admit this, I laugh every time I watch this music video. It's so amusing to me specifically. Like, the members were acting, and to varying degrees of success, I will say. It's such a funny watching experience. I would genuinely recommend you watch it. The song has also become a bit of a classic in B.A.P's catalog. It has more than 12 million streams on Spotify, making it to this day their second most streamed song. Unfortunately, in spite of it definitely being like a classic of B.A.P, I'm actually not all that into it. It's true, it's not a bad song, it's just not my go-to in my B.A.P listening hours. Alrighty, now let's talk B-sides, because One Shot to me is the first great B.A.P album. I said that No Mercy was their first album with great B-sides, and while that is true for 1 or 2 songs, this is the first album where like all the B-sides pretty much are really fucking good. In addition to Rain Sound, which you already know I love, we have Punch. It's messy, but it's fun. You also have Coma, a gorgeous song. It shows off the vocals so well, specifically Daehyun in particular in that song. A little too powerful, frankly. Also, for reasons personally I just straight up can't explain, I constantly mess up Coma and Blind. They're like 3 years apart in the canon, and yet in my mind they're the same song. I've heard both of them approximately 10 times in the making of this video. They're the same to me. They continue to be the same for me. I have no explanation. Back to the point of this slide, the golden B-side, I'm giving it to 0. I have loved that song since I first heard it, damn near a decade ago at this point. I have been obsessed with it for so long. I've loved it since the first time I heard it. I'm so serious. Musically, it's gorgeous. Lyrically, it's excellent. It has everything I want from a B.A.P song. Just after the release of One Shot, we would get our very first B.A.P solo concert when they would kick off their Live on Earth tour with 2 shows in Seoul on February 23rd and February 24th. The tour would pick up again following One Shot promotions. They would go to the US, there would be an Asian leg. They toured really through June. However, because TS is the absolute worst, June would also see B.A.P beginning to gear up for their next album with the release of Coffee Shop on June 28th, literally within a week of them finishing the tour. Anyway, Coffee Shop is great. It's probably the most R&B B.A.P ever gets with their titles, and it is, to me, essential listening. I adore it. It's flawless. It also did pretty great, not as well as their last few singles had done, but still quite good for a boy group of the era, making it to number 31 on the Gaon charts, number 52 on the Melon charts. A few weeks later, we would get our second pre-release single, Hurricane, which came out on July 17th, a half-birthday present to me. And this song, truly a gift to mankind, okay? Specifically the music video is a gift to mankind. I love this music video in a way I truly, and with my whole heart, believe only the bestie properly understands. I love it so much. It's such a mess. It deserves to be the most viewed video on YouTube.com. The song itself, meanwhile, is also a mess. Like, it is objectively a hot fucking mess. And if I were to be objective, I would probably tell you it's not a great song. However, we have established I'm not normal about this group. I can't be, no matter how hard I try. So to me, this song is excellence. To me, this song is perfect. Society, however, seemingly wasn't all that into Hurricane. It didn't do horribly, but it did see a noticeable drop in terms of their peaks. It would peak at number 39 on the Gaon charts and number 72 on the Melon charts. And then, at long last, on August 6th, B.A.P would release Batman, their third mini-album, and this thing right here. This album was also another great seller for B.A.P. It would sell 90,000 copies, setting a new record for the group's highest selling release, while peaking at number 3 on the Gaon charts, and also overall was the 25th highest selling album of 2013, outselling much more established artists like FX's Pink Tape and Shinhwa's The Classic. Unfortunately, Badman's song, whilst successful, did not manage to outdo its predecessor. It did still see pretty stable charting success. It would peak at number 21 on the Gaon charts and number 50 on the Melon charts. So a drop from One Shot, but still pretty impressive for a boy group of their era. YouTube, however, saw by far the biggest decline. With One Shot, you may recall, having 40 million YouTube views. Badman's music video got 11. Definitely a decline. And once again, I don't get it. For the unaware, the Badman music video is quite literally about protesting and police brutality. I'm so confident that if more people knew what this music video was about, they would talk about it a lot more. However, the music video is definitely helped by the fact that Badman is just a great song. I feel like it is sort of the perfect form of early B.A.P music, like specifically the sound they were doing with like Warrior, Power, One Shot, that kind of sound, the more rap sound, is really perfected with Badman, and I think it is sort of the pinnacle of that type of music that B.A.P was doing. I will concede, because I'm honest on this channel, I didn't like the song when I first heard it. I disliked it and then never listened to it again, and didn't actually really start to enjoy it until I saw it. That said, it's been several years since I started liking it, and I still greatly enjoy it to this day. Also, in spite of my admitted bias, I've made it very clear I'm very biased about this group. However, of the early 2010s, of those songs that are sort of really rap meets K-pop, like the true, like Block B sound, B.A.P sound, early Bangtan sound, I think Badman is one of, if not the best forms of that sound. That is a hill I will die on. Okay, enough about the title. Let's talk about the B-sides. This was probably my easiest golden B-side to pick, because going into this album, I was very confident who I was going to give it to, and I did not change my mind. I'm giving it to Excuse Me. This song is genuinely one of B.A.P's strongest B-sides to me, okay? It has one of their best beats. The raps over it are excellent, and the vocals are great on top of that. If you only listen to one B.A.P B-side in your entire life, I don't think this is their overall best, but I do think it is the best at showing what they're capable of in their earlier work. Okay, back to the timeline. Not long after the Badman release, we would get some encore concerts from B.A.P's Live on Earth tour. This one's being called Live on Earth Wanted. They took place in Seoul on August 17th and 18th. Now, those of you intimately aware of B.A.P's Korean discography or have visited their Spotify page recently will know that Badman is the final Korean release from B.A.P in 2013. And you are correct. 2012 saw 5 albums, 2013 saw 2. However, we are so far from done with the year because, like so many groups before them, B.A.P would turn their attention to the East. They would head over to Japan and make their Japanese debut on October 9th with the release of the Japanese version of Warrior. The album would also contain Japanese versions of Power and Punch, and honestly did pretty great for a group of B.A.P's popularity, making it to number 5 on the Japanese charts and selling around 25,000 copies. Also, presumably TS, because they're the worst thing to ever exist in the history of mankind, for reasons unknown to me, have completely wiped B.A.P's Japanese discography off of streaming services. For the most part, it's not that deep. The vast majority of B.A.P's Japanese catalog is just Japanese versions of their Korean songs. There aren't that many original Japanese songs, one of which got a Korean version later. So, for the most part, this is not a big loss. However, one of my favorite B.A.P Japanese releases does not have a Korean version. The only way to experience it is through the music video, which is still up on YouTube. And that fact makes me so mad, but we'll get into it more when we actually get to that song. Anyway, Warrior was swiftly followed by another Japanese single, One Shot, which came out on November 13th. And it was definitely another success. It peaked a lot lower. It only made it to number 10, but still managed to sell 20,000 copies. And when you consider B.A.P's first Japanese single was, at this point, a month old, selling another 20,000 copies with a brand new single, to me, feels impressive. Plus, One Shot actually got promotion, presumably because it was so close to Warrior, they just sort of did one tour. But they did a tour. They did their first Japanese tour. It was the Warrior Begins tour, and it would run through early December, where it wrapped up in Tokyo. And with that, we have finished 2013, so we may now return to the retrospective corner. Alrighty, welcome back. Now, 2013 was technically less busy than 2012. They did have less releases. They both in Korea and just in total put out less things. However, they did go on 2 entire tours this year, so I would still say they were quite busy. They were also, however, extremely successful. Like, they were still one of the top 2 2012 boy group debuts, and just new artists around this time. They were charting successfully, selling well with their albums. They weren't selling EXO numbers, but for most artists, you're not selling EXO numbers. B.A.P was selling really well, and specifically the digitals they were picking up were extremely high for an idol boy group of their era. But 2014 is where the timeline goes ever so slightly insane, so we're gonna move on. But first, another intermission. Now, I think we've established at this point in the video, I'm unhinged when it comes to B.A.P. I'm clinically insane about them. And it's time to get even more unhinged, because it's time to talk about AO3, one of the most unhinged websites in the history of mankind, and I'm mad at myself. I would like to preface this by saying I'm mad at myself. I have like a little AO3 thermosy thing, like a little, it's like a cup kind of, I don't know, I got it from giving money to AO3 during one of their various campaigns, and I have it at work. And I wish I had it right now, because it would have been the perfect thing to place right over there next to me, just like for the vibes. Anyway, this is not my first AO3 rants, okay? Like, I've done AO3 themed intermissions before. If you've watched some of my other history ofs, you will have seen them. And usually, I sit down and I talk about the top pairings in whatever group I'm covering. And while I could do that for B.A.P, I do have feelings about pretty much any pairing between 2 members, even to this day. I will be honest, okay? There was one pairing that I really cared about in this group, and the other ships were there, and they had their moments, but I was a DJ girl. I really and truly pretty much only cared about DJ. For the uninitiated, or just people who don't know how ship names work, Daejae is Daehyun and Youngjae. This ship made me who I am today. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that the reason I can go on an insane rant about Mark Hyuk is because of Daejae. The reason I can dissect, like, Sugyu is because of Daejae. This ship truly made me the man I am today. And I decided that to honor her, to honor Miss Daejae, we should revisit the fics that truly carried the fandom, or at least carried me. I have chosen 3. My top 3 Daejae fics, and I will be putting all 3 in the description for your reading pleasure. Before we continue, I must be clear, I do not know these men in any way whatsoever. I don't know what they get up to in their free time. Also, these are AUs. Like, this isn't real life. And also, to be clear, fan fiction is not real life. If you are someone who does get uncomfortable about, like, RPF, like, real people fic, that is fair. I do have a very good friend who's like that. You can skip this intermission. Lord knows there's enough content in this video to keep you entertained for hours. You can skip this. However, before we truly continue and start dissecting fic, I must highlight one author in particular, the one I call, and now for Yaya, I'm pretty sure that's how you're supposed to, like, read the name. I don't know. I will put their AO3 account in the description as well. They are one of the greatest authors I've ever read. They wrote a ton of Daejae fic in particular, but they've kept writing. I'm pretty sure they're still, like, posting fic. They're an excellent author, okay? I really and truly could fill this entire list. Like, I could give you a top 10 of just their fics. I decided to be at least somewhat normal, somewhat hinged, and include more than one singular author, although I will die on the hill, they low-key deserve a Nobel Prize for Literature. Anyway, in choosing these fics, I did have some criteria for myself. However, the primary one was simply, would I be able to tell you exactly what fic I'm reading simply from the description? Like, if I could read the summary of this fic and give you the plot, then it belonged on this list, okay? That was my core criteria. Also, while this list is in really no particular order, that is not entirely true. The final fic we will be discussing is one of my favorite fics of all time. I read it literally at various points in my life. The first time I read it, I was like 16, and I most recently read it in making this video, and I will not deny, it does hit a bit harder when you're a child. It got me this time. It is also, for the record, the first fic, I believe, to make me bodily sob. So do with that information what you will. Cool. So, starting us off with this list is Boys of Summer. Now, this is the shortest and tamest fic on this list. It's just a summer camp AU. Daehyun and Youngjae are counselors. There are some other idols thrown in. And I have some highlights that I have picked up and decided to share with you in my recent rereading. Item 1. This was pre-bulkification of B.A.P Minhyuk. B.A.P are like campers in the fic. They're in the fic. And they describe him as scrawny here. Now, again, this was pre-bulkification. And also, he's meant to be 12. But I do think it's very funny reading it in 2024 when I think of B.A.P Minhyuk, I think of him as a gigantic human being, and they described him as scrawny and tiny. Item 2. At one point in the fic, there's a paintball fight, and they make Daehyun push Youngjae out of the way, and he gets shot instead. I personally would have switched that and had Youngjae push Daehyun, because of course, as we know, getting shot is Youngjae's MO, especially when it's in some form of media. That is Youngjae's MO. However, I will forgive it here entirely because as of this point in the canon, only one shot had come out. And as we know, Youngjae will go on to become iconic for being shot in media. He has yet to do that at this point. Item 3. The fact that an aged down, canonically approximately 12-year-old B.A.P is wingmanning for Daejae is very amusing to me. I did not go to, like, sleepaway summer camp. I would have absolutely hated it, but I can only imagine how amusing it would have been to have been a 12-year-old and watch your counselors poorly flirt and unabashedly crush on each other. I think that would have been amusing, and I think it is also amusing that canonically in the canon of the fic, 12-year-old B.A.P is the reason they end up together. Item 4, final item on the list. The pool scene. If you read it, you'll know. I think it's cute. I think it's sweet. I will say I remember at the time I first read it, when I was a late teenager, like counselor teenager age, I thought it was accurate to real life. I'm now 25. I barely remember teenage gayness, so I'm assuming it's still accurate. Okay, next fic, entitled Daybreak. The iconic fisting AU, which means I must, before we continue, warn the girls, yes, this is a smut fic. Do with that what you will. However, in spite of being called the iconic fisting AU by me specifically, there's no actual fisting in this fic, and to quote the bestie, it's about the vulnerability. And yeah, it is a smut fic. Like, if you're into gratuitous smut, I get that, and you will receive that if you read this fic. This is a smut fic. However, there's more to it there. Like, there's vibes, there's dynamics, and it is all excellent. And while yes, I could talk about this one for longer, it is primarily smut, and I do have my limits. I feel like discussing fisting on my channel in detail is probably crossing some line, and also I'm practically vibrating with the need to talk about the next fic on this list, so we're just gonna do that. Our third and final fic on this list is entitled This Is How We Remember. And I'm not joking when I tell you that if you said those 5 words to me in a state where I was not emotionally prepared to think about this fic, you would see trauma flash across my face like I have actual PTSD. In all seriousness though, I love this fic. I do not think you understand the deep emotional attachment I have to this piece of writing. I've read it, I believe 5 or 6 times. Like, literally countless points in my life have I read this fic. I have vivid memories of various points in my life in which I've read this fic. It is practically a staple in understanding who I am. Now, as previously mentioned, I reread this fic in the making of this video, and it hit differently. I think it's just the fact that I hadn't read it in probably 4 or 5 years, and I've since experienced actual loss, like people close to me, people important to me, but there were parts of this fic that used to fuck me up that didn't do it for me this time. And then there were different parts of this fic that I used to be totally normal about that made me cry. That said, this fic is excellent, okay? It's these really short, sort of like vignettes. You understand how literature works. But it's these really short scenes that cover friendship. They cover love. They cover loss. They cover losing someone you love. And it really is, honestly, it gets me. It does. It always has. I do wish they did focus a little more on the aftermath of loss, because that is obviously part of losing someone, is that aftermath. And I love a grief study. I will learn to cope. I do wish it was there, but what we got is also perfection. I absolutely could run through the highlights of this fic, the moments that I feel like highlighting for you, and I could do so pretending to be a sane and normal person. However, I think we've established this video is already really long, and there's a very real chance that if I tried to highlight the best parts of this fic, I would be reading you the entire thing. So instead I've chosen one passage that I will be reading verbatim. If you were wondering, I have a laptop to read this, okay? Cool. Ready? Here's story time. Once there was this little boy who was very sick, and he grew up in a city by the ocean, but barely saw it because he was always locked away getting various treatments or trying different medicines. His parents spent a lot of time and money and love trying to make him better, and for a while things were looking good. He went into this thing called remission. His parents decided they would move to Seoul, where doctors were supposed to be better, so that he could stay that way. But Seoul doesn't really work out. He meets some pretty cool people, but maybe the doctors aren't better. Maybe he was never meant to stay better because he's sick again, and it's worse than before, and now they want to lock him away again, and this time he's not even near the ocean. Fun fact, if you asked 2017 Simon, he could recite that passage with concerning accuracy. Like, I might have gotten some words wrong, but I used to know that shit by heart, and it did always used to get me. I think it's just stuff that I've gone through in my life since the last time I read it. That passage fucked me up this time reading it. Like, I knew going in when I went to read that fic again for this video, I knew it was gonna get me, and it did. It got me in ways I expected, it got me in ways I didn't expect, and obviously a big part of that is my age. I've said this many times. I'm now 25. I'm no longer the teenager I was when I first read this fic. I've been through some shit, and that really does play into how I experienced this fic. I think one good part of writing is that I could read this as a teenager and I could find things about it that I really related to and I liked. And now that I'm 25, there's still parts of it that I relate to, that I understand in ways I didn't understand the first time I read it. And I will warn you, this fic is sad. This is not a happy reading experience by the end. I'm not saying that I bodily sobbed this time around, but there were moments I teared up. It could be residual nostalgia, the fact that I do still really like these members. I have a lot of feelings about these members, but I really and truly believe that this fic is one of the greatest things on Archive of Our Own on AO3, and I love it. I hate the way it makes me feel, but I love it. Anyway, for full transparency, this was going to be a different intermission. I was going to highlight my favorite B.A.P fics, and then I remembered that 2 of my favorites are ruined by a man we're not mentioning, and that made me sad. So I decided we're shifting and we're only talking about DJ fics, and here we are. Again, all 3 will be in the description. I would highly recommend all of them. We are now going to return to the timeline. Okay. We have reached 2014, a year that things get admittedly very messy. But TS, in typical TS fashion, wasted no time, kicking off the year with a fan meet in Seoul in January. And then, on February 3rd, B.A.P would release their first studio album, First Sensibility. I do have a copy of it, of course, and I need you to understand, this is one of the greatest albums ever. It was also exceedingly successful, okay? It would earn B.A.P their first ever #1 album. On top of that, it would become the group's first album to clear 100,000 copies, being to this day the group's highest selling release. The album would also go on to be the 12th highest selling album of the entire year, outselling big artists. Like, it outsold Vix's mini album and the first studio album by this group you may have heard of called BTS. But enough about the album. I need to talk about the lead single, Chonsa, before I quite literally explode, because this song is a god-tier banger both with and without the nostalgia glasses. It is also arguably B.A.P's biggest hit, or at least like top 3. It would debut at number 9 on the Gaon charts, their first, and spoilers, only top 10 hit, and meanwhile on the Melon charts it would make it to number 31. Very respectable numbers for a boy group of their era. It is also an absolute classic of B.A.P's catalog with more than 10 million Spotify streams, their 3rd most streamed song on the platform. It also did extremely well on YouTube. The 2 versions of the music video have a combined 20 million views, making it one of the group's most viewed music videos in general, and also, that number does not include the millions more that the stages for the song got. And on top of all that, it would earn B.A.P their first ever music show win, with a win on The Show Champion on February 12th, followed by wins on Music Bank and Inkigayo. And frankly, this song deserved it all. It deserved it all and even more success, because this is one of the greatest K-pop songs ever made. If you enjoy like a good banger pop song, you will like this one. It will give you everything you want and more, because it is the perfect song. But not only does this album have a god-tier title, it has some incredible B-sides on it, okay? Save Me is stunning. With You is an absolute classic. There's a reason they end their concerts with it. And Lovesick is toned down, but it still absolutely fucks. And I will not deny, this was a tough album to pick a golden B-side for, because I love so many songs on it. However, in the end, I chose to give it to the album's 4th song, Spy. I think it's just that it's the most fun. Like, it's the most, like, poppy, chaotic fun. It also does admittedly have some of their best background music. Like, it's funky, and it's cool, and it's so good. However, I'm actually not done talking about the first Sensibility album. I need to talk about Bang Times 2, or as I call her, Bang Squared. I have two stories about this song, or really more accurately, I would say, one story and one memory. Let's start with the memory, okay? In promotion for this album, B.A.P went on some radio shows, as one does. One radio show being Yuna's radio show. That's where this image is from. And on that radio show, they performed this song. There are several things about this performance that I would consider greatly iconic. However, I'm choosing to specifically highlight Daehyun and how, for the last chorus, right, he comes in early. He comes in like 10 seconds early, and it's everything to me. It's so funny. I look forward to it. I've seen this performance literally dozens of times. And every time, yeah, it amuses me. There's also the fact that Jungkook spends the last like 30 seconds laughing because Daehyun came in early. Like, it's just, I love it so much. Now for the story. You may recall I saw B.A.P live. I saw them live in 2016 on their 2016 World Tour. A tour where this song is on the set list. Now, I don't know actually if it was just my concert, but they performed this song twice. They performed Bang Squared twice when I saw them. They performed it once when they were supposed to in the set list, and then they performed it again at the encore. I don't know why. I will never know why. I will never understand why this occurred, but it did elevate this song for me greatly. Speaking of concerts though, following promotions for Jeonsa, B.A.P would host some new concerts, this time kicking off their Live on Earth Continent tour in early March. Then at the end of March, B.A.P would host some fan meets in Japan to drum up hype for their then upcoming Japanese single, No Mercy, which included a Japanese version of Dancing in the Rain, furthering my claims that it's one of their best songs. And this album did exceedingly well, okay? At least by B.A.P standards. It would peak at number 2 in Japan and sell more than 40,000 copies. In other words, it would not only earn the group their highest peaking single, it would sell roughly the combined total of their first 2 singles. After that, B.A.P would begin touring really in earnest. They were touring almost non-stop from April through June. They had legs in the US, Europe, Asia. There was a scheduled leg for South America. They really were putting the world in world tour. The tour also did extremely well. They sold over 100,000 tickets to this tour, an insane number both by 2014 standards and honestly arguably even now. Rewinding a bit to April again, we would get another B.A.P show, our first B.A.P focused show in over a year with the release of B.A.P Attack. It began in April and it ran through August. There were 13 episodes and it pretty much ran for the entirety of their tour. Jumping ahead to June, on June 4th, B.A.P would return, releasing their first single album since Stop It, and their first in over a year with the release of B.A.P Unplugged 2014, this thing right here that I will now be putting aside. The album, as I said, marked B.A.P's first single album in 2 years, and it did peak pretty well. It peaked to number 2. However, it did sell, I don't want to say poorly, but it did see a substantial drop. It sold around 30,000 copies, which, in the standard of B.A.P single albums, is not horrible, but in terms of their recent releases, it's pretty bad. The album's title track, meanwhile, Where Are You, What Are You Doing, would also see a sharp drop. It did make it to number 27 on the Gaon charts, which is fine. However, it did mark the group's first release to fail to appear on the Melon charts. That said, in large part, this would be due to the fact that B.A.P did not promote the song at all. They didn't go on music shows for it. They didn't go on radio shows for it. They didn't really promote it at all. Also, the album only has one B-side, so our golden B-side is, by definition, going to Definitely Today. So everyone please clap. Following the end of B.A.P's tour, they would actually get to take a break. Now, there were still some episodes of B.A.P Attack coming out. The show ran through August. However, you may have noticed in my running through their timeline, B.A.P never really seems to get more than like a couple weeks of a break to breathe. They're always either on tour, promoting an album, prepping for an album, doing something. And I think it's great that they actually got to take a break. Then, after around a month of relaxation, which they greatly deserved, B.A.P would return to Japan to release their next Japanese single, marking the first ever time that a B-side was used as the lead single on a Japanese release. It was also another big hit for B.A.P. Like their last single, it would make it to number 2. However, it actually outsold their prior release, selling more than 50,000 copies. Additionally, around the same time, it was announced that following their South American leg, which was a bit detached from the rest of their world tour, B.A.P. would have a Japanese tour to promote this new album. The key word in that sentence, however, was would. They would go on a tour. They would do a South American leg, because less than a week before the tour was meant to begin with the first show in Argentina, B.A.P. would actually cancel, or more accurately, TS would actually cancel the entire leg of the tour. TS would claim it's because B.A.P. was exhausted and needed to rest, and that's all well and good, but I'm sure it was also a factor that on November 27th, all the members of B.A.P. announced they would be suing TS Entertainment. As a result of the lawsuit, our timeline grinds to a halt, because there's a court case now, so we're actually just gonna jump straight over to the retrospective corner. Okay, hi, welcome back. 2014, a bit much. We did start strong. We started with arguably B.A.P.'s most successful comeback, and certainly one of their most successful comebacks, with their highest charting single on the Gaon charts and their highest selling album, plus a big tour. Like, they were doing so well at the start of the year. Unfortunately, TS Entertainment literally sucks in every way imaginable and is quite literally incapable of not getting sued by the artists they represent. And in fact, that's what we're gonna do next. That's our next intermission, okay? We're gonna pause, and I'm gonna cover the legal complaints made against this one singular company in the span of like 4 years. Cool. Hi, I need you to realize that the entire purpose of this intermission is for me to highlight how absolutely horrible TS is and how incapable they are of not treating their artists like shit and getting sued. Now, I thought about how I want to handle this, how I want to order this list. My original thought was go in the order of the lawsuits. I've since changed my mind. We're actually going to go in debut order. Okay, so we're going to start with the first artists under TS, move to the last ones, and cover how many of the members of every single one of their groups went on to sue them. Great, so first artists to debut under TS would be the hip-hop duo Untouchable. You may recall, they are the ones who discovered Jungkook and subsequently kind of ruined his life. Now, as of me filming this in 2024, half of the members, aka one member of Untouchable, Sleepy, has gone on to sue TS. His main gripe? They apparently did not pay him for roughly a decade, a trend that you will notice becomes very common with TS Entertainment. Our next artist to debut under TS is, of course, friend of the channel, Secret, where again, half of the members, Jiyoon and Hyosung, would go on to sue the company, also claiming they never got paid. After that, of course, we have B.A.P. B.A.P. was actually the first ever artists to sue TS that I can find, and they, like everyone else, claimed that they hadn't been paid. Specifically, they said that they had earned the label more than $9 million between the years of 2012 and 2014, and during that time, each member had been paid approximately $18,000 total. For context, that means B.A.P. was getting approximately 0.2% of the money they earned. I will repeat that. It is not 2%, it's 0.2%. Approximately $500 a month to live. Anyway, looking to the future, 2015 saw TS debuting 7-member girl group Sonamu, and 2 of the members of Sonamu have gone on to sue TS. They too have claimed that they were never paid. However, their lawsuit said that in spite of their 4 years under the label, they never received a single cent. Closing out the list, we have the final TS artist, Tursange, TRCNG, the 10-member boy group. They debuted in 2017. And just like everyone else, 2 of the members of this group have also gone on to sue TS Entertainment. However, the Tursange lawsuit is the absolute worst of all of them, because not only were they suing for not being paid, because of course they'd never gotten paid, they claimed they were regularly beaten. They were forced to practice for over 12 hours at a time with no breaks. Their dorm did not have proper plumbing, and even after approximately 15 straight hours of practicing, they would be expected to return like 3 hours later. They would get 3 hours to sleep at night. And to top it all off, apparently the members would be regularly denied food if they did not behave properly. And I need you all to be aware that at the time of the lawsuit, the two members had debuted when they were 17 years old and claimed in the lawsuit that this had been going on for years. This has been going on since they became trainees, and that's honestly the part that really gets me. Like, yes, of course a company should pay their artists. I don't think I really need to get into why it's very fucked up to have a group earn you millions of dollars and you give them pennies. There's no excuse for that but greed. However, that's kind of normal. We live in capitalism. We know that people are greedy, people are going to do their best to hold on to every cent they possibly can. I expect that from society. I do not expect a company to regularly abuse the children under their care. And yes, I do mean children. The youngest member of Tursinch was 15 when he debuted. 15 years old. A freshman in high school, not even old enough to drive a car in the United States of America. Like, reading stuff like this makes me so glad that TS essentially went bankrupt, that they are no longer capable of doing this to other people, because they should not be allowed to exist. If this is how you're going to treat your artists, you should not be allowed to have them. You should be legally obligated to drain your bank account, disperse the money equally, and then go into hiding. Because if I see you in the street, I will kidnap you, torture you to the brink of death, and leave you there for months. Anyway, I'm normal. I'm so normal about this group, this company, all of this. I'm so normal. And we're now gonna go talk about 2015. Okay, hi. It's 2015 now. Now, for obvious reasons, 2015's start is a bit rocky, to say the least, but there are a few things I do want to cover. First, on April 3rd, Jungkook would release 4:44 a.m. on his YouTube channel, and then around a month later, Junong would release the song No Title over on Spotify. I decided to actually group these songs together because lyrically, they're very similar. The main difference I would simply say is just that Jungkook's lyrics are better, which makes sense. He is the more experienced lyricist between the two, but they both have very similar themes. That theme is that TS Entertainment fucking sucks, they're the absolute worst, and we should all hate them. Like, these songs are not subtle about it, to be clear. If you knew what was going on at the time they were released, you know that's what they're about. They also did decently well, all things considered. Jungkook's video has more than 1 million views. Junong's song has more than 500,000 plays on SoundCloud. Like, they did decently well, all things considered, and again, are very unsubtly saying fuck you to TS. But that's all we got for the majority of 2015, so I'm going to fast forward. Cool, so on August 1st, 2015, TS Entertainment would announce that they had reached a settlement with the members of B.A.P, and that the group would be returning to the label. Now, I do not know what happened behind the scenes. I was not in the room. I am not aware of what this settlement was. However, given the fact that it was very obvious from a pretty early point post this agreement that B.A.P was not re-signing with TS following the end of their contract, and also given the fact that TS has since been sued several times by several other artists for the exact same shit B.A.P sued them for, I do just have a couple questions, and I would love to know the terms of this settlement. My personal crack theory, I think B.A.P thought they were going to lose and took what they could get. Like, when Block B sued their label, they lost. When most groups sue their labels like this, they lose. If I had to guess, again, this is just my theory, I do not know, I would assume B.A.P thought they were going to lose. TS offered them a good enough settlement, and they decided to take it, knowing full well they had no intention of continuing with the label. Focusing on more positive things, on November 16th, a few months later, B.A.P would release Matrix, their fourth mini-album along with its title track Young, Wild, and Free. And honestly, from the album sales, it's pretty clear that a lot of people were really excited for B.A.P to return. The album sold 100,000 copies and spent 2 weeks at #1, going on to be the 17th highest selling album for the entire year of 2015. However, while B.A.P was able to maintain solid physical sales following the lawsuit, the same cannot be said for their digitals. Young, Wild, and Free completely failed to appear on the weekly Melon charts. Meanwhile, over on the Gallon charts, it would peak at number 42, their lowest peaking single in years, like since Warrior. YouTube also saw a pretty sharp drop in views. The two versions of the music video have a combined 10 million views, which isn't awful, but in comparison to their last several mainline, like real promoted releases, that isn't ideal for your long-awaited comeback. The only area where Young, Wild, and Free really managed to maintain some level of success from Chonsa is music show wins. It would get the group another 2 wins, including one on Music Bank on November 27th, the exact 1-year anniversary of the announcement of the lawsuit. Now, let's talk about the song itself. For context, this is where I entered the story. I became a B.A.P fan during Young, Wild, and Free era, and it might be the nostalgia, I don't know. I think this is an excellent song. I really do. I think it shows some more versatility than some other B.A.P songs while staying a complete banger. Like, this song is, to me at the very least, absolutely excellent. Now, let's talk B-sides, okay? The golden B-side for this one, actually a bit tough. I greatly enjoy the real songs that are B-sides, aka not really monologue, but the other 3, I enjoy them all greatly. However, in the end, I decided to give it to the opening song, Take You There. In spite of by their very existence in the modern day, B.A.P makes me depressed. I have no better way to say it. Like, thinking about B.A.P for the majority of my time knowing who they are made me very sad. However, in spite of that, Take You There makes me extremely happy. I can't explain it, but the serotonin boost I get from that song can be studied by scientists. Like, it does things to my spirit and is also a great song. However, the rest of 2015 is just spent promoting their new album and doing normal year-end stuff. So we are actually going to already jump back to the retrospective corner. Oh, 2015. A crucial year for me because it's when I became a B.A.P fan, but also a very depressing year for me because it's when I became a B.A.P fan. Like, me and the bestie were talking in the making of this video because Lord knows I tortured her in doing so. She was just as big of a fan as I was, and I was texting her constantly, but I was talking to her about it, and I was like, can you believe we saw this group, learned the tea, like learned about the lawsuit, and then we're like, yeah, we can get into them. There's no moral fears at play. We can totally do it. Nothing bad's gonna happen. Turning our attention back to B.A.P though, they did kind of flop in 2015, or at least the cracks were beginning to show. They still had really good album sales this year, that is true. However, their digitals, something they've always been really, really good at, were starting to fall off, and it's not ideal that it happened after such a long hiatus. And I have a theory, I, Simon, have a theorem that I would like to discuss that plays into why B.A.P fell off so quickly. So instead of a regular intermission, it is Simon's theory time. Okay, Simon's theory time. Now, I would like to preface this theory by saying, I obviously can't prove this. There is no way to prove any of this beyond all reasonable doubt, or even beyond any form of doubt. This is simply my personal insane theory, however I have had it for many years. I'm also fairly confident that this theory, in theory, would piss a lot of people off. At least hypothetically, it would piss a concerning number of people off simply by the sheer nature of it. But we're also this far into the video. I'm assuming if you've made it this deep, you've accepted whatever I'm going to tell you. But enough wasting time, let's get to my theory. My personal theorem is that following the lawsuit, specifically in late 2014, a large number of B.A.P's fans left. That's not news. You can see that when we talk about it. However, my theory is that a large portion of those fans moved to become armies. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm insane and wrong, and that's fine, but you're going to hear me out anyway. I understand that Bangtan, even in 2015, would go on to be bigger than B.A.P really ever was. This is not news to me. I study the charts like it's my goddamn job. I know this. However, it is interesting to me that during 2014, B.A.P and Bangtan had pretty similar sounds. They were both very hip-hop based. Bangtan veered towards pop, but that's their own journey. However, it is interesting to me that in addition to having similar sounds, the rise of Bangtan, when they really started to explode, perfectly correlates with when not only B.A.P fell off, but specifically when there was suddenly zero content for their sizable fan base to consume. Obviously, yes, there are several factors in both the falling off of a group and the rise of popularity of a different group. B.A.P went on over a year-long hiatus. That's obviously going to lose you fans. Bangtan, meanwhile, around the same time, gained a very large international fan base, including me. I got into Bangtan in 2015 before knowing who the fuck B.A.P even was. However, I like my theory, and I stand by it. Anyway, that's all for Simon's Theory time. Let's get back to the timeline. Alrighty, 2016 time, the year I became a B.A.P fan, and the year's a lot of vibes shifted. And we start the year off in late February with the beginning of the Live on Earth 2016 tour with 2 shows in Seoul. Also, yes, their tours are still called Live on Earth. TS is awful at literally everything. But it's fine, because the next day, on February 22nd, B.A.P would release Carnival, their 5th mini album, this thing right here. I need us all to have a moment. Okay, I'm going to put it up. I need us all to have a moment of agreement. This thing isn't signed. Nobody signed that. Got it? Anyway, Carnival did see a pretty sharp drop in sales. It only sold around 65,000 copies, which is not bad. But their last album sold 100,000 copies, so that's not ideal, but it still managed to peak at number 2 on the charts, so at least they're still charting well. Turning our attention to the title track, Feel So Good, it would continue the decline that Young, Wild, and Free started to show, becoming the group's newest lowest peaking single on the Gaon charts, making it to number 51, and making it to number 96 on the Melon charts, their final song to appear there. It also would get a combined 11 million views on YouTube, better than Young, Wild, and Free technically, but not by much, and still nowhere near what they were getting with their big pre-lawsuit music videos. As for its music show performance, it would get B.A.P a second win on the show, another win over there. However, the show is admittedly the easiest show to win on if you're like a mid-sized group. So personally, I would take a top 40 on the Gaon charts over a win on the show literally any day. But let's talk about the actual song for just a second. Personally, if you ask me, this is like top 2 B.A.P titles. This and Chunsa are my top 2 B.A.P title tracks, and I just love it so much, okay? It's so fun, it's so poppy, it's so catchy, it's so good. It's honestly excellent. I am so glad that this was one of my B.A.P titles that I got to experience, because I got to really love it when it was being loved by the general public. Now for our golden B-side, I'm giving it to Carnival the song, a fitting choice for Carnival the album. Actually though, this song is so fun and cute, and it's such a serotonin boost. I dare you, go listen to this song without smiling, without jamming, without enjoying it. You can't. It is not physically possible. Anyway, following promotions for Carnival, B.A.P would return to Japan with their first release there since their lawsuit, and their first Japanese studio album entitled Best Absolute Perfect, which came out on March 30th. The album did fine in Japan. It did. It made it to number 4 on the Japanese charts and sold around 25,000 copies. So, not their best, definitely not what they were doing with their last few Japanese releases, but certainly not bad. The album was also the first by B.A.P to be led with an original Japanese song. The song was Kingdom, an absolute banger. Just like every other Japanese album, Kingdom and the rest of the album have been scrubbed off streaming, so you can't listen to like the original Japanese version there. However, the music video is still up, so you can watch it if you want to, and it genuinely holds up. Following some quick Japanese promotions, B.A.P would really begin touring in earnest. They toured almost non-stop from like April through August. They were on the road constantly and would wrap up with 2 shows in Seoul on August 6th and August 7th. And this tour was massive. Not only was it their longest tour, it was their biggest tour. They performed in more than 25 cities. They performed more than 30 shows and in more than 15 countries. They hit pretty much every big market there is to hit. They hit Europe, they hit Asia, they hit the US. They didn't hit South America, although in their defense they have trauma there. However, to me, the most crucial leg of this tour was the Canadian tour, because on August 19th, 2016, B.A.P performed in Vancouver. And I was at that show. Originally, we were going to get like a good chunk of time here where I talked about the concert and my feelings about it. I've decided to save that. That's going to be our next intermission. So spoilers, the next intermission is going to be the B.A.P concert experience. Also, is now a good time for me to complain about a shit-ass company? Because it's gonna happen whether you say yes or no. This time, it is actually not about TS Entertainment, it's about HYBE, and how they ruined my entire life and will to live. For the unaware, 2016, like this tour in specifically, was like peak Simon is a B.A.P stan, okay? I was watching everything. Notably, I was watching the V-Lives that B.A.P would do behind the scenes of all their tours. It would basically just be like, oh, like, we have time to kill before we have to go on stage, so let's go live on V-Live. It was like a rotation, okay? Like, the members would rotate. You get it. You understand how lives work, right? And I vividly and specifically recall Daehyun, my favorite member, doing the V-Live for Vancouver. I can picture it in my mind's eye, him walking around backstage, okay? I would rewatch this V-Live. It would fill me with nostalgia and joy and happiness. Unfortunately, I can't anymore. You wanna know why? You wanna know why I can't anymore? Because HYBE decided to purchase V-Live and then completely shut it down. I know I talk about this literally constantly. If V-Live comes up, I will complain about HYBE shutting it down. It is practically a fact of life, because if you were not around for the V-Live era, you do not understand the amount of media and content that was completely lost to all of society when HYBE made this choice. Like literally millions of hours, probably, at least thousands of hours of content was exclusively available on V-Live, because a lot of groups, I don't actually know if it was all of them, but I know a lot of groups, specifically B.A.P, would archive their lives. You could go back and you could, in the aftermath, watch the live. So if you missed it, you could watch it. Groups used to debut music videos on V-Live. It was another metric where it would be like, this was the most liked music video on V-Live. I watched the first Blackpink music videos, like Whistle and Boombaya. I watched live on V-Live. You did not watch them live on YouTube when they came out. You'd watch them live on V-Live. It was a thing. And HYBE, I don't know why. If I had to guess, it's just the fact that they'd already built Weverse and they didn't want a competitor. They bought V-Live and they shut it down. They didn't just say you can't post on here anymore. They didn't archive the content. They just shut it down. Literally deleting countless hours, countless videos that can now never be recovered. I know I keep saying that one day I will make a video that's just HYBE's crimes against K-pop, right? The various countless things they've done to make this industry worse. And I would die on the hill that the deletion of V-Live is genuinely the worst thing they ever did, and failing that, it is absolutely top 3 most unforgivable things HYBE ever did. Okay. I feel better. I feel calmer. Back to B.A.P. July 13th, B.A.P would release their next Japanese single album, Feel So Good. And just like their fault, it did fine. However, it did begin to show that B.A.P was like really slipping in Japan. This album would make it to number 5 on the chart, so not bad, but it sold 17,000 copies. Their lowest selling release in Japan to date. Then, on August 8th, you may recall, quite literally the day after B.A.P finished their tour, they would release their 5th single album, Put 'Em Up. This thing, right here, that I will also now be setting aside. Okay. Put 'Em Up is also the album that really showed that B.A.P was starting to slip in Korea as well. Now, I want to preface this by saying, with the exception of their first 2 single albums, B.A.P singles never sold as well as the other albums, okay? Like, it just was not a thing. The minis and the fulls always sold better. With that said, this album peaked at number 3 on the charts and sold 26,000 copies. An insane decline when I remind you their last album sold 65 and the album before that sold 100. Now let's talk about the title track, That's My Jam. This was really the beginning of the end for B.A.P. It would mark the group's first ever single to not appear on the Gaon charts, as well as failing to chart on the Melon charts. So, let's turn our attention to streaming. Let's look at YouTube.com. The combined views for the 2 versions of the That's My Jam music video have around 6.5 million views. Their lowest viewed music video since Crash in 2012. And again, I don't get it. That's My Jam is not like this hidden gem of B.A.P's discography. It's not their best song. It's not even their best title track of 2016. However, it is good. It's fun. My only theory is simply the fact that they didn't promote this. In spite of TS deciding to release it the day after their tour ended, they didn't promote it because, for obvious reasons, the members were fucking exhausted. So they didn't promote it. But as a result, it also flopped. With that, let's move to B-sides. Now, this was another very easy golden B-side for me to pick. I'm giving it to the opener, Do What I Feel. I'm so serious when I tell you, this is one of my favorite B.A.P B-sides, and the general public for once actually does seem to agree with me because this song has nearly 2 million streams on Spotify. For a frame of reference, that is their most streamed B-side ever. September was, in theory, quiet, so we're actually going to jump to October when B.A.P would star in the long-running One Fine Day series. They went off to Hawaii, and I promise you, I'm not making this up, and you're going to think that I am. The concept for this little series was that a fan was going to join B.A.P in Hawaii. This instantly went up in flames. A lot of people had a lot to say about how this was a terrible idea, and they were right. They were literally all right. Like, can you imagine if, like, a modern group, not even like a popular group, like if Ace in the modern day was like, yeah, we're gonna do a trip where we bring fans with us? Insanity. Insanity. Could never. Anyway, as far as I'm aware, this did not come to fruition. No fan went with them. However, I didn't feel like rewatching One Fine Day for this, so I am functioning fully off of memory. Anyway, B.A.P's One Fine Day would begin on October 17th. It would begin airing, I should say, on October 17th, and would run through December. TS, in the running trend of being terrible, would also claim that the reason for this trip, the reason they were sending B.A.P to Hawaii, is that the members were exhausted. The members were exhausted and they needed to rest and recuperate, right? That does beg the immediate question of why did you film it for a television show? You could have just sent them to Hawaii. I have a couple theories. Theory 1 is they wanted someone else to pay for the trip. I assume that when you go on a trip for One Fine Day, NBC pays for the trip. That's my theory. So option 1, TS is greedy. They didn't want to pay for the trip. Option 2, which is my main theory, is that they wanted to get more hype for the then upcoming B.A.P album, and having them on a major network would definitely help. Speaking of, on November 7th, B.A.P released Nora, this album right here. That is a physical, real-life prop. However, it was also announced that Jungkook, in spite of being in the album itself, would not be taking part in promotions. And Nora actually did pretty great in the grand scheme of things. It would sell 50,000 copies and peak at number 2 on the Gaon charts. Now, that is half of what their first full had sold, but for B.A.P at this time, it is double what their last album sold, so I'm willing to take it. Now, let's talk about the title track, Skydive. Sonically speaking, Skydive to me feels much more like a return to form. It feels more to me like the sort of loud sound they had with their early work as opposed to the more poppy sound they were doing with their later work. It also didn't do great, and I'm being perfectly honest. It failed to chart completely. The music video has like 5 million views, and it got the group their last ever music show win with another win on the show. I honestly don't have much to say beyond that. This song really isn't for me. I don't enjoy it all that much personally, and clearly neither did the general public. So, let's move to B-sides instead, because in spite of not being their best late stage title, I'm gonna say, this is probably their best album overall. Strong contenders for the Golden B-side include roughly half of the list of songs on this album, okay? Walk is chill and excellent, Fermata is gorgeous, I Guess I Need You is a classic, and Confession is one of their strongest hip-hop songs. However, at the end of the day, I chose to give it to Killer because I fucking love that song. It's bright, it's fun, it's poppy, it's catchy. It also, for the record, has one of their best choruses in their entire catalog. It really has everything. The album would also contain a Korean version of Kingdom. You can't see it, please hold. Kingdom. Down there. A Korean version, which means you can actually go and stream Kingdom. It's just as good as the Japanese version. Also, if you were wondering when in the B.A.P timeline Jonghyuk got upgraded to main vocal, it was here. It was specifically, I would argue, this very album. Maybe their last two, but like this is where he really got upgraded to it. He had a solo song on this album Now, which he performed on tour. A memory that has been burned into my mind. I could probably draw you the sweater he was wearing. Promotions for Skydive would run until early December, just in time for B.A.P to release their 6th Japanese single album, Fly High, their first single album to be led by an original Japanese song. And it did fine. It made it to number 7 on the charts and sold around 20,000 copies, so technically not their worst, but certainly not their best. Also, you remember like an hour ago now when I was telling you about how all of B.A.P's Japanese releases were scrubbed off streaming, and it was fine for the most part, but there was one song that is now completely unavailable to stream? That's this one. That's Fly High. I love this song. It has such unique background music for B.A.P. It's such a banger. I absolutely adore this song, and I can't stream it. I can only ever watch the music video for it, and while it's a good music video, I would like to be able to stream it. Anyway, that just about wraps up 2016. I got nothing else to tell you about it, so back to the retrospective corner we go. Okay, 2016. 2016 to me is the start of a very specific phase in B.A.P's career, which I've dubbed the milk them till they die phase. It is this phase of their career where TS essentially saw them and said, okay, we have 3 calendar years left with this group. Let's milk as much money as we possibly can from them until they die of exhaustion. Like, B.A.P has always been pretty busy. Casual reminder, they released 5 physical albums in 2012. They released 4 in 2013. They've always been busy. But their 2016 schedule almost seems intentionally grueling. We started the year with a fan sign. Then immediately after that, we got a Korean comeback before they went on a world tour, during which they released a Japanese album. Immediately after their world tour, they released another Korean album, and we wrap up the year with another Korean album and another Japanese album. Do you understand how insane that sounds? From a group that was in their 5th year of promotions? That's not normal. The only break B.A.P seemingly got during the year was when they filmed their show in Hawaii. Like, they were constantly doing things. And I understand that, especially nowadays, it's not uncommon to see, like, Let Blank Idol Rest trending on Twitter. I've seen it happen several times. But I feel like if any other human being had to experience the schedules that B.A.P was doing in 2016, they truly might die. Like, I think if I had to do it, it would actually kill me. This made me sad. This retrospective made me sad. Let's talk about something happier for our next intermission. Okay, as previously mentioned, or dare I say warned, it's B.A.P concert time. I went to the tour they went on in 2016, and I have chosen 4 moments in particular to highlight from my experience because it's my video and I can do what I want. So, for context, me and the bestie absolutely splurged on these tickets, okay? We got the highest tier possible. We were, I believe, in the 6th row or the 4th row. I don't remember, it's been 8 years. But we had great seats, like dead center, very close to the stage. And a lot of perks came with these seats, including my first ever physical album, which totally isn't signed to anyone because the person who would have hypothetically signed it obviously doesn't exist. Anyway, let's get into the memories. Memory number 1 actually needed the backstory of the perks, okay? Here's the story. So, in line, me and the bestie, right? We were 16 and 17. We were children, right? There were these girls in line with us. My memory tells me they were in their 20s. It's been 8 years, God only knows. But I remember they looked older than us. Like, I saw them and I was like, okay, these are adults. I was not like, these are fellow teens, okay? And they were really fucking rude. I vividly remember them being really fucking rude. They would shove us in the line, they were commenting, and us, being scared little children, did not say anything back. Now, fast forward, we were late because the concert was in Vancouver, it's a 3-hour drive, and we hit traffic on the way. So we dropped off our stuff where we were staying, and we went straight to the venue, and we were just like, we're gonna miss the show, so we essentially rushed straight to our seats. However, once we were seated, we remembered, we were like, oh wait, we have all these perks, we get all this shit with our seats. So, I ran back out. I went out to the lobby, I went up to the table that had all the stuff, and I was like, hey, we have seats X and Z, we would like our stuff. And they said, cool, here are your bags of goodies. And then I took them and went back to the seat. However, notably to me is that at the front of the line, they were also selling merch. They were specifically selling, I guess, the leftover merch. I don't know. Now that I'm saying this aloud, I could have completely misconstrued this memory in my head, but either way, I remember the girls, those aforementioned 20-year-olds who were fucking rude as shit. They were at the front of the line. They wanted to buy something. I believe they wanted to buy the goodie bag type thing that we had just gotten. However, we took the last 2. I vividly recall we took the last 2, and then we went back to our seats. And it gave me a very real sense of vindication that they got what they deserved for being rude. Actually, now that I tell the story, I remember what it was. We got the last signed albums. That's what it was. They'd set aside the exact number of signed albums, and once everyone was in the venue, they were going to sell the leftovers, I guess. I don't know. I do remember we got the last 2 signed albums. Either way, I also would like to point out, I believe they did not look at my tickets. I don't think they actually asked to see proof that I was seated where I was seated. Also, it's been 8 years. All of this could be wrong. Who the fuck even knows? Memory number 2. So, if you look at the set list for this tour, you will see Youngjae had a solo stage. I don't remember what it was. It does not matter, because I actually didn't see Youngjae's solo stage. A certain person who obviously doesn't exist definitely didn't have a birthday that day, which means he definitely didn't get a solo stage because, again, he does not exist. And they totally did not remove Youngjae's solo stage as a result for this person who didn't exist getting a solo stage. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because during the final Ment, when they were wrapping up, Daehyun was like, oh, what was your favorite part of the concert? Was it this stage? Was it this stage? Was it Youngjae's solo stage? And me and the bestie looked at each other and we were like, what solo stage? Youngjae didn't have a solo stage. We would have remembered, because the bestie is a diehard Youngjae stan, or at least was at the time. She would have remembered if Youngjae had a solo stage. He did not have a solo stage. Obviously, he was just reading off a prompter. Like, obviously they just didn't change the prompter. It was the set text, or he just memorized it, but it was the set text for all their other concerts, where Youngjae did have a solo stage. However, it amuses me to remember that Daehyun asked us if Youngjae's solo stage was our favorite part of the concert when there was no Youngjae solo stage. My final 2 memories are both high touch related. We got high touch with our extremely expensive concert. I actually say they're extremely expensive. If we spent that much money on seats now, we wouldn't even be in the pit. We wouldn't even have great seats. Like, I spent on B.A.P roughly what I spent on, like, an Hype In. They were not great seats. That's not the point. Things used to be better. But we got high touch with our seats, right? First high touch related memory is just the fact that their hands were really dry. I get it, okay? They're busy. They just performed an entire concert, and they just high-fived a bunch of people before us. I get that. However, both me and the bestie in the aftermath looked at each other, and we acknowledged maybe they could have moisturized before they touched a bunch of people's hands. Anyway, last memory, okay? I'm a Daehyun stan. We've established this. I'm clinically insane about this man. And at the very least since 2015, I actually don't know off the top of my head when he got it, but he has a tattoo on his wrist. He has a tattoo on, I believe, his left wrist. It says hold. That's not important information, but I know it, so I'm sharing it. Now, during the actual high touch experience, they were sending us through at lightning speed. I was weirdly concerned that I was gonna physically miss their hand. I don't know why this was such a fear for me, but it was a fear, so I was very intently focused on making sure my hand made contact with their hand, because in my mind that's what I was paying for. Obviously what I was actually paying for was to see them that close, and in retrospect that would have been nice. I do not have any living memory of seeing Junang or Jonguk during that high touch, but either way, the point of the story is that I got to Daehyun's hand, and I saw the tattoo, and it felt like society, the entire world, went into slow motion, because I remember vividly looking up, seeing the tattoo, looking up, and seeing Daehyun. This memory has lived with me for close to a decade. Anyway, this has been my concert highlights. However, I do want it known, this was not the original intermission I wanted to do here. Originally, what I wanted to do was sort of take the set list and rank it in terms of what I would like to see, and I specifically wanted the set list from my show. I could not find a verifiable set list that was accurate to me because there were two things that I was able to tell that immediately ruled out most set lists. First, Youngjae having a solo stage. As we've established, Youngjae did not have a solo stage at my concert. I could have switched it out for the solo stage. That didn't happen, but it was a way that I would be like, I don't trust the set list. The other thing that I looked for is, of course, as previously discussed, they performed Bang Squared twice in my show, and every setlist I could find did not show Bang Squared twice. Now, it has since been countless years. I do not remember the setlist well enough to be able to be like, yes, I can off the top of my head list it out for you. So I did not get to do what I originally wanted, but I want you to imagine that I did and to be happy that I got to have that fun. Anyway, with that, let us move into 2017. Okay. 2017 time, or as I like to think of it, the last real year of B.A.P. And starting off the year, B.A.P. would go on tour. They would tour for around a week, but they would show up in 5 cities in Japan with their B.A.P. Play tour, their second Japanese tour, to promote their new Japanese single. You may have forgotten about Fly High, because for you, it's been several minutes since I discussed it, but for me, it's been no time at all, which gives me the perfect opportunity to remind you all that it is the perfect song, the greatest of B.A.P's Japanese releases, and deserves to be available on streaming. February was basically spent prepping, so we're going to jump ahead to March, when on March 7th, B.A.P. released their 6th single album, Rose, along with its title track, Wake Me Up, this lovely thing right here. There are children loudly shrieking outside. I'm hoping you can't hear them, and if you can, please ignore them. Moving right along. Rose, the album. This is the best-selling B.A.P. single album. It would sell 43,000 copies, more than any of their past single albums had sold, and spoilers, more than any of their future single albums would sell, and also managed to peak at number 3 on the album charts. Now for the title track, Wake Me Up. While it is nowhere near as big as their early work, like their pre-lawsuit releases, of the late-stage B.A.P. singles or the post-lawsuit singles, it is one of their most successful. It did not chart, which is unfortunately the new normal for B.A.P. releases. It did, however, do extremely well on Spotify. On Spotify, it has more than 16.5 million streams. Their most streamed song there to this day. Meanwhile, over on YouTube, it has more than 14 million views on the music video, which, again, that is not on par with their early work. It is, in recent times, their most viewed music video in years, okay? And also, the comeback stage for this did go slightly viral with more than 2 million views just on that one stage. It is also important to note that Wake Me Up would see the return of Jungkook. You may recall he was not active for promotions with their noir album. He would return for Rose, and they actually worked it into the choreography as well, that like he was returning. It was a whole thing that I really liked as part of the choreo. But enough stats. Let's talk about the song, shall we? In my opinion, this is one of their best post-lawsuit singles. of the, even just pre-lawsuit in general, this is one of their best singles. It's dark, but it's not too dark. The vocals are gorgeous, the raps are excellent, the music is great, and the choreography is really cool. Like, if you want sort of the quintessential B.A.P song, maybe not quintessentially B.A.P, but if you want a great B.A.P title, I would recommend this one. Now for our golden B-side, I'm choosing to give it to Diamond for ya for two reasons. Reason number one is just I think it's a really good song. And reason number two is that the other B-side on this album, Dystopia, is a rare B.A.P miss. And I use the term miss very intentionally because even B.A.P songs that I don't particularly enjoy, I can see the benefit of, I can see how they work well for the group. Dystopia is not one of those songs. Dystopia to me is just a song that B.A.P made and is not very good. Back to Diamond for ya. It really is just an excellent song, if you ask me. It's a lot more toned down than most B.A.P releases, and dare I say a lot sexier than pretty much anything they'd put out up until this point. And also, Youngjae's note at the end is frankly a bit iconic. Following promotions for Wake Me Up, B.A.P would launch their next world tour, the Party Baby Tour, a whole new name, which would begin with 3 shows in Seoul at the end of March. And once again, B.A.P was touring like crazy. That is the one core theme of B.A.P's tours. They tour like crazy, okay? There were shows in the US, in Europe, in Asia, everywhere. Everywhere but South America, again, because I would argue trauma. However, not long after the tour started, we would get our 7th Japanese single from B.A.P, Wake Me Up, which came out on April 26th. And it did about as well as their Japanese singles had done. It would make it to number 4 on the charts in Japan and sell around 26,000 copies, which does technically make it their best-selling post-lawsuit Japanese release. However, it is also half of what their best-selling pre-lawsuit single had sold. Jumping ahead to June, B.A.P would pause their tour. They didn't fully wrap it up yet, but they paused it to release their first project single, the Party Baby single. The single came out on June 8th and would feature 2 songs, Daehyun's Shadow, which featured Junong, and Jungup's Try My Luck. While this was not an official B.A.P comeback, they did promote it. Each member did like a couple stages on music shows, so do with that what you will, but it was like a real comeback, and it also didn't do great digitally, so we're just gonna kind of keep going. That said, I would actually be remiss if I did not tell you, these songs are really good. Both of them are very good, and neither one really gets all that much appreciation because it was from this weird project single this late into their career, but they're really good songs. After that, on June 28th, B.A.P would release Unlimited, their 2nd Japanese album. I will say the album came out weirdly far from the Japanese leg of their Party Baby tour, and it did fine. It did. It sold like 20,000 copies, so about what we can expect from B.A.P during this era. And like, I straight up don't get it. Can I just say that? Like, I don't get, not why his album sold the way it did, but why TS didn't just have their Japanese leg here, or at least like release the album around the time of their Japanese leg. It would have made so much more sense to me personally, but what can I say? TS is truly terrible, so are we really surprised? Also, would you be shocked to learn that almost immediately after ending their world tour, TS would make B.A.P release and promote an album? Because you should believe it. Yeah, on September 5th, B.A.P would release Blue, their 7th single album, along with its title track, Honeymoon. And while, in comparison to most B.A.P singles, it didn't do horribly, it sold around 26,000 copies, right? Which is, again, not bad for a B.A.P single, but it is a noticeable drop from the sales of their last single, which was their highest selling one. Additionally, Blue would peak at number 4 on the Gaon charts, making it, to this day, their lowest peaking album, which I feel like is kind of insane to say out loud, but it is true. Anyway, let's talk about Honeymoon now, because I actually really like this song, even though it made almost no noise. The song obviously didn't chart, but it did do decently well on streaming. It has around 10 million Spotify streams, and the 2 versions of the music video have around 11 million views. Both noticeably lower than their last single, but not bad in the grand scheme of things. And again, I don't get it. I don't. Honeymoon is fun. okay? It's catchy, it's summery. Yes, it came out in September, but you can have a summer single in September, and I think it should have done better. Also, fun fact time, I vividly recall hating the looks this era. I really did. I think it's the music video, because in the music video, the looks are rough. Jungkook looks like this. He has these weird blue extensions. Daehyun's hair, choices were made with that color, but music video looks were rough. They both looked normal during the stages. Okay, now let's talk Golden B-side. I'm giving it to All the Way Up, but I will confess my own bias, which is that when I was taking these notes, I watched every stage for this song. There aren't many, but I watched them all. And I was having literal flashbacks to being approximately 18 years old, just starting college, watching all these stages, and it brought on a wave of nostalgia that I have never experienced before in my entire life. However, we actually are not done discussing Honeymoon, because on September 20th, B.A.P would release Honeymoon, their 8th Japanese single. And this is not ideal, to say the least. It would make it to number 5 on the chart, so not bad, but it only sold 15,000 copies. Their biggest flop in Japan, frankly. Moving into October, we would get the final 2 shows of the Party Baby World Tour, which they called Party Baby Climax, a name I actually think is really good. November actually saw B.A.P getting a break after like 8 straight months of promotions, so we're going to jump ahead to December when B.A.P would release Ego, their final album, this thing right here. And it did about what one would expect a B.A.P single to do during this era. It sold 30,000 copies and peaked at number 3, so a little more than their last single had sold, but still not quite the levels of Rose. Moving to the title track, the lead single of this album was Hands Up, a song that personally I don't love, but sonically it is actually kind of similar to their early work, which I do think is interesting. I do feel like it's a very full circle moment, because if I had to guess, they probably knew this was their last comeback. Unfortunately, society straight up just does not care about this song, whilst both Wake Me Up and Honeymoon were seeing pretty decent Spotify and YouTube numbers. The same cannot be said for Hands Up. Hands Up would see 7.5 million YouTube views, noticeable drop from their last song, and only around 5 million streams, half of what Honeymoon got. Basically, this is not the final single B.A.P deserved, but I've also kind of learned to accept it. Anyway, let's talk about B-sides now. I'm giving it to Think Hole, ironically the final song on the final album by B.A.P. That's not why I'm giving it to it, obviously. I think it's a good song, it's fun, it's poppy, I like it, but it is also ironic that it is the final song on the final album. Also, I was reminded while taking these notes of a little drama thing that happened in regards to this comeback. So, fun fact, fun little story time. When they were filming the music video for this song, Daehyun was in a musical. I have not been bringing up his musicals. The video is already this long. We don't need it to be longer. But he was in a musical at the time, so he was busy. And he had to leave shooting for the music video a little early. And he used a body double. It was fine. His face is still his face, but he used a body double, and people got surprisingly angry about it. Personally, I don't really care that it's a body double. It's a music video, right? It's not like he had a body double in the concert. I don't give a shit. But I do think it's very interesting that people hated his schedule for the wrong reasons. They did not, I also hated Daehyun's schedule, right? They hated Daehyun's schedule because he didn't have a full day to dedicate to a music video. I hated Daehyun's schedule because he didn't sleep. He was busy all the time and was actively coping with alcohol. Anyway, that finishes 2017, and we shall once more be returning to the retrospective corner. Okay, we're back. 2017. 2017 is absolutely a continuation of the TS is milking every drop of money they can from B.A.P before they die. And you remember how I said it was insane the amount of work B.A.P was doing in their 5th year of promotions? 2017 was their 6th year as a group, during which time they released 3 Korean albums, 3 Japanese albums, went on a world tour, and went on a Japanese tour. Again, this is not normal for a group as old as B.A.P. For context, B2B debuted the same year as B.A.P. Had just as many years in the industry. They were a little newer, but
a couple months, right? They both debuted in 2012. In 2017, B2B released 2 Korean albums, 2 Japanese albums, and did a couple concerts. We will agree, at least I will agree, Cube kind of sucks, but at least they were not working their very established artists to the literal bone. But whatever, it's fine. Let's go do another intermission before I start actively screaming again about how terrible TS is, because I think we've established I will do it unprompted. Okay, it is time for our final intermission, and I, for one, am very excited because we are going to rate the B.A.P albums. Specifically, we're going to rate the album packaging. So, for those who haven't seen when I do these intermissions, I use the star system. I basically just do full and half stars. It's easier that way. So every album has a score of X or X and a half stars. Let's talk criteria now, shall we? There are 3 core factors in my scoring. Factor number 1 is simply the sizing, the dimensions, and how consistent it is with the albums released around it. Factor number 2 is the album cover. For the unaware, I love a good album cover. I've went on multiple tirades about them in this very video, but we're going to talk about album covers, okay? That's factor number 2. Factor number 3 is specifically the placement of the photo book. This is going to sound like a weird thing, but there are various B.A.P albums where it is relevant, so it is also a factor. Also, before we continue, I am going to reiterate that these are just my opinions. You can disagree with every single ranking I give every single album, and that is totally fine. I love that for you, I love that for me, I love that for us. Cool, so starting us off is, of course, B.A.P's debut album, Warrior. I'm giving this girl 3 stars. I do like the sizing. I think it's a good size. However, this album cover is a little bit boring. Also, remember how I said photo books would come into play? Let's have a little unboxing moment, shall we? The way you open this album, you have the CD on one side, and then you have this built-in photo book over here. I don't like that. I don't like that. It's a stupid thing, but it pisses me off more than it has any right to, so it lost half a star for having a photo book on the opposite side. Moving on, next is Power, this lovely thing right here. I'm giving her 3.5 stars. I like the sizing. Again, I think it's good, not quite consistent, but I think it's a good size. I like that. I like that it's not too big, essentially. I also like the fact that this comes off. Sometimes I hate it. I have said I hate it in other videos. The thing is with this one is that you can slide it off, and suddenly the cover looks a lot more cool. It looks a lot more interesting, but also it looks good with this on it. Additionally, it got extra points for having a good cover. I think this is actually a really cool cover. The only real thing holding it back is that, again, the photo book is on the opposite side. Next up, the first B.A.P mini album, No Mercy. I'm giving her 2 stars. I'm giving her 2 stars, okay? Actually, I take it back. I'm giving her 1.5 stars because it loses credit because the pre-release had such a cool album cover. But on top of that, I don't like this album. At least in terms of the packaging. As we know, I love the album itself. First of all, it feels large. It feels I don't want to say it's overly square, because B.A.P has square albums coming up that I enjoy the packaging for. It's too big and square. I feel like if they cut it here and it was longer, more of a rectangle, it would be better. So there's that. Also, let's look at this album cover for just a moment. What in the holy hell is this? Was graphic design your passion? Because this is boring as shit. Now for the repackaged album, Crash. This mammoth right here. I'm giving it 1.5 stars. Let's start with the obvious. The cover's boring. Okay? The cover is just as boring as the original album was. On top of that, it's large. I don't like it. It is the physically largest album B.A.P put out. Please look at the size of this in comparison to my head. It's too big. On top of that, the photo book is not actually a photo book. These are individual little pages. However, I did put Jung in front because I like this picture. That said, I was originally going to give it 1 star, I will concede. However, I did give it back half a point because my album is damaged. We've discussed this. The bottom of my album does essentially come off. So it got back half a point. We have somehow only reached the final album of 2012, which is of course Power. I'm giving it 4 stars. I said this when we reviewed the actual album, or discussed the album, I should say. I really like this album packaging. I think it's It is small, but I feel like it's like perfectly small. This time being square works in its favor, so I like that. I think it's cute. Again, the one thing holding it back is that the photo book is on the other side. Other than that, I think it's good. Also, the cover is really cool. Like, I don't know if you can really tell, but like, it's reflective and it's like power signs and it looks cool. Now for the iconic one-shot album, I'm gonna give her 3.5 stars. The main negative is that I'm not a huge fan of the album cover. It could have been worse though. Like, I do like, let me see if I can show you. I like the guns and I like that this is like barbed wire, so there's that. However, the main positive for the one-shot album is the sizing. Spoilers, we haven't seen it yet. This is actually a really common album size, both in general and for B.A.P. I do not know the dimensions. I cannot be bothered to look. But like, not only does B.A.P. use roughly this sizing a lot of groups do. Like, if I got my Love Me Right album off my EXO shelf up here, you can see it's right there. But if I got this down, it's roughly this size. I love consistent album packaging sizes, so it got extra credit. Speaking of consistency, next is the Bad Man EP. It is the same dimensions, which did earn it some credit. However, I'm giving it 3 stars. The gas mask is cool, and hold on, let me show you the CD, because the CD is also really, really cool. I know that's not a factor we discussed, but it's still true. Plus, it sort of opens like a trifold. I'm not gonna really show it off. Like, this isn't an unboxing video, but it has good packaging. It's just not their best packaging. Speaking of, moving into 2014, we have B.A.P's first studio album, First Sensibility. Maybe I'm insanely biased. I'm giving this 5 stars. For starters, I think this cover is so cool. There's a lot of details on it also. I'm trying to see if I can like show you in a way. Like, there's crossed guns over here. You have the little mottos riding around in the album cover. Like, when I first saw this, I thought it looked cool. And having now bought the album and being able to look at it up close, you see a lot of details on it. I think that's really cool. I also think that it's really cool. You see how it says First Sensibility here? That's actually cut out. Like, there we go. If I open the album that's inside, there's a hole here. I think that's so cool. I love that. Our next album to discuss is the final pre-lawsuit release, which is the 2014 Unplugged album right here. Fun fact, this was the first album to actually show the members' faces, which is cute. It's also getting 4.5 stars. For starters, the picture is actually really, really cute. It's very good. I'm not going to show it to you. But it's very good, so there's that. Also, it's the one-shot sizing. Like, the one-shot sizing is for this album. And also, let me show you. Look at the CD. There's a bus on the CD. This album is perfect. Jumping ahead to 2015, we have the Matrix EP. And this is another 5-star album packaging for me. For starters, one-shot sizing. I love consistent album packaging. I love that when I have my B.A.P. albums displayed, I can stack them all with this sizing, and it looks really good. So there's that. Also, I like the cover. I've seen this album cover God knows how many times. I love it so much. I think it's so good. It has all the bunnies. The bunnies are drinking wine while lounging on a spaceship. Like, it's good. Now for the final B.A.P. mini album, Carnival. Look at me. Look at me. Don't look at the album. Look at me. This isn't signed. I've said it like 6 times. This isn't signed. I have literally debated wiping the signature off of this. I can't bring myself to do it. But as far as you, me, and God are concerned, nobody signed this damn thing. Anyway, I'm going to give the Carnival packaging 4 stars. I think it's a cute cover, and it's still the one-shot sizing. Again, I love consistent sizing, so I got some extra credit for that. However, it lost credit in 2 key ways. First, I associate it with a man who doesn't exist, which costs it at least half a point. The other half a point is because this album's actually messed up. I don't know if you can, like, really tell. This is not supposed to be sticking out. They glued it in wrong. And normally I wouldn't care. Like, I actually gave credit back to the Crash album because it was a misprint. And not a misprint, like, it was fucked up. But the difference is, I bought that one off of eBay. This one I received directly from TS Entertainment in exchange for giving them hundreds of dollars to see a concert. So, I'm less forgiving of the mistake. We have reached the final album with the one-shot sizing, which is the Put 'Em Up single. Now, this album is going to get 4 stars from me, and there's a couple reasons as to why. First, it's the one-shot sizing that got it some extra credit. It has the members on the cover, and the looks are varied. Some could look better. Young Jae's hair, for example, is simultaneously a mess and also iconic. Plus, Daehyun looks cute on the cover, and as we know, I'm a Daehyun supremacist. Next is the Noir album, this thing right here. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. Personally, I think I like the concept of this cover a lot more than I actually like the cover. There's just a lot of wasted space here. Like, I do like the idea of them not just doing the bunnies, like this more artistic-y kind of cover. I think it's good. I just think it wasn't executed to the best of its ability, so that did knock it down a little bit. I do like the sizing. I will say that. Spoilers, the next 2 B.A.P albums are this exact size. We know I love consistent album sizing, so that got it some extra points. Our next album is the Rose single. I do have both versions with me. Yeah, usually when I do this, I don't include both because I usually just pick the one I like more. So in this case, I'm picking the dark one, but I do think that they both look equally good. That said, I am docking points, giving it 3 stars. We've established I do like the sizing. It's the exact same size as Noir, but this album cover is a bit boring, to say the least. I do appreciate that on the cover of the Rose album they have a rose, but I wish there was a bit more going on here. Moving on, next we have B.A.P's 7th single album, their penultimate release, Blue. I do also have both versions of this album. I only brought this one because for once I think this is vastly superior. That said, I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I do think this is objectively very pretty. It's really nice. It looks even better on the back, honestly. They should have made this the front, but again, it's just there's not a lot going on, which brings it down. Also, I know I did not say would be a factor, but like the looks in this era were rough. Like the looks I don't like are the looks in the photo book. That's very upsetting to me. Anyway, our final B.A.P album, Ego. This is getting another 3.5 stars. I do like that the last album they released had their faces on the cover. I don't know why. I just appreciate that. My main thing, can we look at the empty space at the top for a minute? There's a lot they could have done there. Like, so you can see, they had to space out the words so much. They could have done something up there. I don't know what, but I wish they did something. But yeah, thus concludes my rating of B.A.P album covers. I did order all 3 versions of the new, like, reunion album. It has yet to arrive. And I don't have a better time to film this video than right now. I tried to wait for it. I put this off by a week. But I can't put this off any longer and keep the timeline that I've set for myself. So we're not gonna have them in this video. And we're all gonna have to be okay with that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed these little intermissions. This was the last one. So I hope you liked it. Also, I realized in the middle of ranking these album covers that in the entire time I was sitting here, I meant to tell you I'm wearing my NCT Dream hoodie. My B.A.P sweater is disintegrating as I touch it. Like, the white parts are actively coming off. So I decided I'm not gonna put it back on to film these parts because I want it to stay remotely intact. So I got out a different hoodie from a different group that I love, which is why I'm wearing the NCT Dream hoodie. But yeah, I hope you liked these intermissions. Let us now do 2018. Okay, 2018 time. A surprisingly empty year when I remind you, we're very much still in the milk as much money as possible from these boys before they flee us era. Either way, we begin our tale on January 3rd when B.A.P would release Hands Up as their 9th Japanese single. And it did fine, I guess. It did make it to number 4 on the Japanese charts, but it still only sold like 16,000 copies, so definitely not their biggest seller. Then, in March, we would get the final physical release credited to B.A.P, which was the group's 3rd Japanese studio album, Massive. The album was another acceptable seller, I guess I'll call it. Peaked at number 6, it sold 14,000 copies. However, after Massive, things actually get weirdly quiet, okay? Like, I don't know why, because again, we are very much in the milk as much money as possible from these boys era. But either way, we get a break. Our tale resumes in June when B.A.P kicked off the aptly named Limited Tour. They only performed in Taipei and Bangkok before doing 2 shows in Seoul. Then,
in August, we would get our very first departure from the group when Jungkook left. You may recall Jungkook debuted before the others. He debuted with his solo single. You might have forgotten since it's been a hot minute. For me personally, it's been roughly 5 hours, but it's fine. I've been here talking about B.A.P. I'm actually having a great time. And yeah, he had a different contract. He left in August. Also, as always when I make these videos, when you are not an official member of the group, I do not cover your activities. We will get back to Jungkook because he is in the reunion, but anything he does between now and the end of B.A.P. will not be part of this video. Jumping ahead to November, we would get our second special B.A.P. single with the release of, I've always read it as the Recollection. Now that I'm actually looking at it, it might be Recollection. I don't know, and it doesn't matter. This was technically a solo single collection, although Junong is on 3 of the 4 songs, but our songs would be Stay With Me by Youngjae, which featured Junong, as well as an actual solo Farewell. Junong released Howler, and then Jung-up released Annoying, which featured Junong. Also, I need you all to be aware of something that I've been aware of for years, and I think about with concerning frequency. The final song on the final thing credited to B.A.P. Like, if you sat down, you pulled up B.A.P's entire discography in release order, the final song you would hear is called Farewell. Do you understand how much that fucked me up when I learned it? Anyway, in November, B.A.P. would embark on their final US tour, the Forever Tour, a tour I almost went to, actually. Fun fact, story time. I was in college when this tour happened. I was in college back east, and they were coming. I think the closest show to me was Philly. And I was going to go to the Philly show. And I thought about it. Like, I had to actively think about it, and I decided seeing them as not the full lineup, seeing them without Jungkook, would literally make me too depressed. Because I need you all to remember, at this point, we all knew B.A.P. was not renewing their contracts. We all knew they were over. And I decided I would frankly be too depressed in the aftermath, and I did not go to the show. Either way, following the Forever Tour, we would get the Forever with Babies Tour, a very brief European tour that ran from late November to like mid-December, with the group's final ever performance as B.A.P. taking place on December 9th, 2018 in Germany. However, we have now reached the end times. You may recall back in my Junong section 800 years ago, I told you how his contract ended early and he decided to go on tour anyway. This was the tour. The Forever with Babies tour was that tour, and after the tour ended, his contract was up and he would leave TS Entertainment. Then, in early January, everyone else's contracts would be up. They all left the label, they would go do their own things. Nothing happens between when Junong left and everyone else left, so there's nothing to cover. So, for the final time in this video, we will be going to the retrospective corner. Can I be honest? 2018 B.A.P. makes me extremely and existentially depressed. First, there's the obvious. 2018 was the end of B.A.P. They disbanded this year. Not officially, but like, we all knew the writing was on the wall. Our contracts were up at the beginning of 2019. We knew they weren't continuing. Everyone in the fandom, or at least everyone I was aware of in the fandom and was seeing on Twitter, knew they were gonna break up. We knew it was over. But there was also part of us that saw Beast specifically leave Cube, become Highlight, and continue to promote. And I know a lot of people on Twitter were really hopeful B.A.P. would do something similar. In fact, I vividly recall seeing a tweet that I can no longer find. I assume it's just been deleted in the many years since. But I vividly recall a tweet that was essentially outlining how B.A.P. and Beast were similar enough that it could have worked. The core thing that had them going for it was the fact that both groups had one member who was like the main producer of their music. For example, if Red Velvet left SM, a lot of their music is produced by in-house SM producers. They would not have the same musical sound, or at least they would not have the same cohesive production that they would have had before. The same is not true for B.A.P. Jungkook produced their albums. He could have easily continued to produce their album. Obviously, this did not happen. They did not continue under a new name with a new label. And I am genuinely curious. It's just the morbid fascination part of me, but I am curious
if they thought about it, like if they talked about it, especially when Jungkook and Junyoung left, if they were like, do we want to reunite as six somewhere else? And I'm curious because it would have been nice, but at the same time, I could also see the members being literally too traumatized to do so. Anyway, the other reason, and arguably the main reason that 2018 actually makes me really sad to think about, is that we didn't really get a proper goodbye. Like, in 2017, when they released their last album, when they released Ego, we didn't know it was the last release. They had another year on their contracts. Even though Jungkook was leaving halfway through, they had 6 months. Like, they had time to release another album. And yes, they did do some tours. We did get our special single, but the special single isn't the same. Like, at least for me, Daehyun wasn't even on it. So, like, for me, that's already not really enough. And also for the tours, by definition, that is something the majority of your fans will not be able to engage with. Obviously, Jungkook leaving meant that, like, a true disbandment single a la Goodbye by 21 was essentially off the table. But here's my thing. Here's my theory. I thought of this when I was making this video and these notes. I think what they should have done is they should have announced Jungkook's departure and a new album. If they announced the two things simultaneously, they said, hey, at the end of next month, Jungkook is leaving, but we're releasing a new album in 2 weeks, and you can buy that album, I think it would have actually seen a big spike in sales. I think a lot of the older fans would have bought it to essentially say goodbye. And instead, our final release from B.A.P is a special single. It didn't even include all the members that were still in the group, and the song with the most members on it only had 2 of them. Like, it wasn't the closure that a lot of people wanted, and I think that's what makes B.A.P such a sore subject for a lot of people, because this is not just a me thing. Like, a lot of people have B.A.P as like a really touchy subject for them because we never got closure. We never got that moment where we knew, like, this is the last thing they're gonna do as a group that we all get to engage with. Whatever. It is what it is. Like, it's been 6 years. We've all we can pretend we moved on, but we've all continued living at the very least. And now, let's go talk about what the members have been up to for those several years. Okay. Now, as we know, in 2024, we would get a B.A.P reunion. So, I'm gonna say, attempt at briefly covering what they've been up to. I will try and be succinct. Being succinct about B.A.P, you may have noticed, is far from my strong suit, so yeah. Anyway, we're gonna go in the order of this picture, actually, entirely because it amuses me greatly. So first, Yoo Young-jae. In the immediate aftermath of B.A.P, aka 2019, Young-jae would debut as a soloist. He released 2 solo albums in 2019, his first mini-album Fancy, his second mini-album Oh On. They sold horribly, like combined have under 10,000 sales. 2 of them are me though, I bought both albums. However, Young-jae, seeing that music was no longer the best place to secure a bag, actually shifted very wisely into acting. He has been in TV shows. He was in a movie that came out in 2022. He did variety shows. He's been acting and also has continued the trend of Yoo Young-jae dying in media. Anyway, next member, Jonghyuk. Jonghyuk would struggle a bit more than Young-jae to find his footing. He wouldn't make his solo debut until 2020. However, one thing of note about Jonghyuk, I already talked about this, but I am going to bring it up again, is that Jonghyuk was constantly seen with the other members, specifically at their solo fan meets. Pretty much all of them, I think, have done solo fan meets, or at least solo fan meet tours in Asia, but it was not uncommon to get a mini B.A.P reunion at these solo member fan meets, and Jonghyuk, almost always a main character. He was, like, always there, in ways that are very impressive, frankly. Like, he was constantly hitting up the other members, and is very possibly the only reason we actually got a reunion. Speaking of, 2023, Jonghyuk, without a label at the time, went on Peak Time. Now, the whole point of this show was failed idols. Okay, that was the whole gimmick. It was basically, you remember? Okay. There's like a whole industrial complex of newest wannabes, the groups that go on these shows in hopes of revitalizing their careers. It's a whole thing. I'm not getting into it. But Peak Time is one of the shows. It aired on JTBC in 2023. Jungkook did extremely well. He would finish the show in 3rd place. And in doing so, he got himself just enough attention to secure a contract with MA Entertainment or Ma Entertainment. I don't actually know. I call them MA Entertainment. And that proved to be critical to what we're currently discussing because, as you may recall, MA Entertainment is the one who released the B.A.P reunion album. Okay. It's Daehyun time. As an insane Daehyun stan, I am critically aware of everything he's been up to since 2018, and it is honestly the biggest mess. Starting off in 2019, he, like Youngjae, would debut as a soloist. He released 2 solo albums in 2019. Both sold horribly, neither one managed to clear 5,000 copies. 2020, Daehyun would pivot to musicals. He'd done a couple over the years with B.A.P. 2020, however, he did, I believe, 2 of them. He was really in his musical bag, and then at the end of 2020, he did his mandatory military service. Daehyun would get out of the military in 2022 and pivoted careers once again, this time becoming a YouTuber. I'm so serious when I tell you that from July of 2022 to January of 2023, Daehyun was a YouTuber. Like, he had a YouTube channel with his friend. I forgot his friend's name, and I did not look it up for this video, but he had a YouTube channel with his friend. And it never really did great. Like, the channel currently has around 5,000 subscribers. Its most viewed video has around 12,000 views, so not ideal for a member of a group that used to get literally tens of millions, but also that's more views and subscribers than I have, so who am I to judge? However, 2023 was also a crucial year for Daehyun. You may recall, Jungkook joined MA Entertainment in 2023. He would bring Daehyun with him, and as a result, we got the B.A.P reunion album. Cool. Next, our collective father and leader, Jungkook. In what should be a surprise to essentially nobody, Jungkook's main bag has been music, right? He's either been releasing his own stuff or, to my surprise, actually working as a producer. I think he should do it more, but he did recently produce a handful of songs on one of the newer Just Be albums. However, Jungkook has mainly just been vibing. I will concede, he did have producer credits on almost every B.A.P release, so he was presumably making a lot more money than any of the other members, and frankly, he deserves it. That man went through absolute hell. Give him all of the money. Okay, anyway, last member, the only one not a part of the reunion, my child, Choi-Jun. Yes, I know he's literally older than me. Don't even start. That's my son, and I will defend him with my life. Now let's talk about what he's been up to. Junong would also have his solo debut in 2019, however, unlike the other members, his label was still shit, even though he left at TS Entertainment. He would end up suing them because they didn't pay him. That actually did not stop him. This man put out so much music. He has more solo music than any of the other members. He has 3 minis to date and an absolute metric ton of singles. Unfortunately, Junong is currently doing his mandatory military service, which means he is not part of the B.A.P reunion, but it's fine. I've convinced myself it's fine, because it means now we can get an OT5 reunion, and I can start to actually heal. However, that is where the members have been, which means it is now officially reunion time. Now, before we get into the reunion, I need to tell you one thing. TS Entertainment sucks. This shouldn't be news, but somehow, in recent times, they renewed their trademark on B.A.P. This album, the reunion album, is released under the name Bang and Jung and You and Moon. I will not be calling it that because for some reason, I always want to call it Jung and Dae because it's Jung Daehyun, so my brain just fills in the next word. So my brain literally, when I search things, I have to type Bang Jung Dae, delete the Dae, and then type You, but also it's a mouthful. And B.A.P is still what I refer to them as in my psyche, and that's what I'll refer to them as in this video. Cool. So, June 12th. My greatest dreams came true. My greatest fantasies were brought to fruition because B.A.P released the Man on the Moon documentary and announced a new album. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I shed real human tears at this news. And then, a month later, on July 15th, we would get Farewell, the first new B.A.P song in nearly 7 years. The song is fun, okay? It's fun, it's cute, it's great, I like it. It is admittedly a very different sound than any of their other titles, really, but I also like it, so I'm not mad. Unfortunately, the song did kind of flop. It didn't have a music video, and Lord knows it wasn't going to chart, so we only really have Spotify to work with. The song has like 500,000 streams, which isn't bad, but it's not great. But Farewell, you may recall, was just the pre-release, and on August 8th, we would get Curtain Call, the group's 6th mini-album. The album was led by the single Gone, and I will admit, this song flopped. It has like 750,000 Spotify streams, fine YouTube views in the grand scheme of things. It's not a huge hit. I also didn't expect it to be, frankly. We're talking about B.A.P, a group whose popularity peaked a decade ago. A group who hasn't had a charting song in the last 2 years of their career, which itself was like 6 years ago, okay? I did not walk into this comeback expecting a When I Move era resurgence, but I was happy with whatever I was gonna get. As for the album, it actually did phenomenally well by B.A.P standards, reaching 70,000 sales and being at number 3 on the charts. For a frame of reference, the last mini-album, Carnival, credited to B.A.P, sold 65,000 copies. This managed to outsell it. Now, let's talk about B-sides, okay? I will be the first to admit, the B-sides on this album aren't as good as other B.A.P albums. Specifically, their last couple of minis are probably better than this one. However, most boy group music nowadays is bad, so I'm more than happy to take these songs. Anyway, my pick for Golden B-side is going to be the album's opener, Love. I do think it is the strongest B-side, so that's why it's getting the award. I do enjoy all the songs on this album, to be clear. I feel like my last statements did not properly convey that. I like this album. I think it's a good album. I just think B.A.P has great albums. Following promotions for Gone, B.A.P would hold a little fan con tour, performing their first shows together in years on August 17th and 18th in Seoul. And while I'm here, can we talk about something that I noticed on Twitter? A lot of people at the Seoul shows have their light sticks. I only own one light stick. I have an Ace light stick. I have no intention of selling it. However, I can see a world where, as I get older, as maybe Ace disbands or goes inactive and stops promoting for, say, 6 years, I might sell it. I could see it. One day I will start selling a lot of the merch I have. Like, I know it's gonna happen. There'll be some stuff I keep. But I was thinking about it when I was looking at all the pictures and clips from their concert, and I was like, the level of love I would have to still have for a group that hasn't been active in years to hold on to their stuff, if I was actively selling stuff, is strong. And I think it's really sweet. I think it's really cute that so many people still had their old B.A.P light sticks. After that, we would get some more fan cons. They would bop around Asia. They performed in a couple cities. Also, I know it's a long shot, right? Like, I know this is the biggest fever dream to ever fever dream, but I would quite literally kill a man for them to come here. I would pay concerning amounts of money if they came to me. Like, I would be front and center at that fan con, screaming my fucking head off. I want it so bad. Either way, though, this has been the history of B.A.P. and bang and whatever. And I know this is a long video, right? Like, I haven't even filmed the intermissions or the retrospectives, and I've been in this room for 5.5 hours, so I know this is going to be long, which means if you made it this far, thank you so fucking much for watching. This video started as not even like a joking thing. I started taking these notes after the reunion album came out, and I was really depressed about some stuff, and I was like, I need something to throw myself into. And my solution was this video. A video I think we can all agree I put a lot of time into, right? Like nearly 60 pages of notes, 160 something slides, however many hours this ends up being. Like, I worked so hard to try and make this video, and it was a weird process because I have a lot of feelings about B.A.P as a group, in the sense of, like, I remember when they disbanded. I remember how I felt when Jungkook left. I remember how I felt when Carnival came out and I got to see them live. And they are probably, there's like one or two groups I can think of that are more formative to me as a K-pop fan. But B.A.P is definitely up there. And to be able to sit here and just talk about them for hours at a time is actually so fun for me. I know it doesn't seem like it. I know it seems like I was losing aspects of my sanity at various points in this video. But I had a great time. And I hope you did too. And if you did, you can like and subscribe. Or don't. I will really be okay either way. You can also comment whatever you want. Comment your favorite B.A.P song. Comment your least favorite B.A.P song. Comment if you went to any of their concerts ever. Comment whatever you want. Aside from that, in the description, I will be putting a playlist that has all of my other history ofs that are all varying degrees of long. The only one I think that can compete with this one is probably going to be NCT, and God only knows how long this video is actually going to end up being, so this may beat that. But until then, you may check those out if you so choose. I'll also I've done a handful of B.A.P album reviews. I will put them down there as well. You may check those out if you so wish. And yeah, thank you again for watching. Bye!